Going on here? This hangout is live. All right. I didn't see the countdown. That's weird.
No.
Usually we get a little bit of a countdown. Anyways, hey everyone. So I'm just going to get ready to share the links here on my social media pages. I'll let Matt talk for a couple minutes, but this is going to be our second official podcast that's hopefully going to be a successful one. And the headline or the heading I've given this one is Corporate Canada Crime and Corruption. And yeah, SNC-Lavalin will definitely be being discussed today.
Yeah, so as my father said, today we're going to get into the SNC-Lavalin corruption scandal surrounding Jody Wilson-Raybould's statement. And we're going to get into all that, dive into the charges, what's actually going on, break it down for you guys. And then we will see where it spirals into. And as this is our second podcast. Yeah, and the first one we did was about the People's Party of Canada and Maxime Bernier, and what a good segue into the second podcast of this Canadian corruption with the Liberals. And I hope you know, even the Conservatives and Andrew Scheer would have probably worked hand in hand with this type of stuff. So don't think it's just a Liberal problem. The Conservatives as well are in bed deep when it comes to insider trading with the, all that stuff, bribing politicians for government contracts. It's a Liberal and a Conservative problem, and that's why our first podcast promoting the PPC, People's Party of Canada, is such a great segue into the second one, and why when you guys get out to vote, please go out and vote for the People's Party of Canada, because one of the main things on their platform is ending all the money in politics and all that corruption stuff. And if we had a person like a Maxime Bernier in our parliament as a prime minister instead of Trudeau, we wouldn't be dealing with these situations like we are today, talking about the SNC. So I don't know if my father's ready. I can pass it back over to him.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm just, like I said, I just had to share a few links. So yeah, I'm going to start in first and foremost, because we have to kind of deal with the timeline, because the media, the way they're representing this story, and we're definitely seeing from CBC. I actually kind of got my hopes up prematurely, I might add. I should have never done that, right? Is think that, oh, look, it seems like the CBC might be coming around to try to be a little bit objective in the reporting. And no. That was just, I guess, to get enough details so they could create a whole new narrative to go forward. And what I'm seeing out there today already, based on the subsequent reports from predominantly the CBC, is now they're going to take that one little line that Raybould said in her testimony. Basically, the only thing that doesn't point to the fact that, yes, this was illegal, but why she said it, that she more or less alluded that it was definitely inappropriate, but she wasn't necessarily saying that it was legal. I don't know, like I said, why she felt the need to say that, because at the end of the day, everything that she said based on her testimony alludes to the fact that it was definitely illegal. So I don't know if she's still trying to offer a little bit of protection. But either way, the simple fact of the matter is the media is definitely trying to misconstrue and misrepresent what's being said out there today. And like I say, I pay attention to the fact that when they bring pundits on, because I mean, as a CBC reporter, like what's her name, Veshy or whatever her name is, if you're bringing someone on as a panelist, right, someone that you want to use, or a pundit, a political pundit, to talk about or discuss an issue such as this, you have the option to bring basically anyone on, right? So you got to pay attention to the people that she's choosing to bring on. And when you see even the so-called conservative pundits like McKay, right? A lot of Canadians have zero respect for McKay. So when even when they're saying that, oh, look, we're bringing a conservative in here to give a counterpoint or a rebuttal to the leftist or the liberal talking point, they're still basically are the Canadian people putting a lot of trust or faith or validity into the words or the rhetoric of McKay? No, I don't think so. So like I say, you got to pay attention to, now think about it. They would never invite someone like myself on the panel. Why? Because there'd be a way too much truth going on there, and they wouldn't be able to control that narrative. That's what the media does, folks. That's literally what they do today. And we're going to get to the fact that that's not just me making a blanket or a false claim or just a speculative claim. Even based on Jody Wilson-Raybould and her testimony, she alluded to that fact. But we have to understand that's what's happening today. You're going to see some damage control out there. And that's why you, especially, well, I mean, whether you're conservative, libertarian, an independent, critical thinker, or apolitical, you have to, and this is very important, when you're out there talking about this stuff in public, or even if it's online or social media, those on the left of the political spectrum, those that maybe are still lying or giving or excuses or trying to create some kind of political cover because that's what the media is trying to espouse or jam in their head. Make sure you do your best to push back against them and give them some proper information so they don't have this, because that's the biggest problem I see is the media. They go in, it's basically like doing a PR campaign, and then you get a large percentage of the population that now has this false belief that all this was, it was nothing. It was just minor. All they're doing is regurgitating and repeating, like I say, these political talking points, and they come from the people that were chosen by, like I say, the people in the CBC. So if you wanted to get some real truth, well, they definitely have people out there would be able to give you that. Like I say, and it's not just me. I'm just one of many, many Canadians that would be more than willing to speak some real truth to this issue, but they're not willing to invite people like us on the show. So that should at least give you pause and give you some concern as to how they're actually covering it.
Yeah, so I'll just a couple points you mentioned there. So at the first, you said you were confused why she said that it wasn't illegal, and that's kind of the narrative they're going for, that it was pressure, but it wasn't seen as illegal. Now, my take on that aspect is I think all she's doing is playing it safe, that she knows that she's an RCMP investigation is going to be opened up into this, and she's just doing her part, which is, hey, I'm going to lay the facts out as how they are. And if you listen to her testimony, she was very thorough with her everything, very detailed. So I think what she's doing is just, here's the facts at it. I'm not going to weigh in whether it was illegal or not because the investigation will determine that. And if she goes and states her case like, hey, this is illegal, blah, 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 it might, tamper with that investigation, her being biased or whatever. And I know technically she could. She's the Attorney General. She can give her opinion on whether it was illegal or not. But I think she's just playing the safe card there. And I think that's simply all it is. And, the way I get that feeling is some of the statements that she gave basically saying that, hey, we need a solution here. There can be no solution without intervention, and all these type of things that got mentioned, these key quotes that were now coming out through her testimony. That in itself shows that obviously there's obstruction and collusion. So she doesn't need to speak to that. The facts will prove that. So I think she's just playing the, hey, I'm an honest person. Here's the facts of the case. You can judge it. RCMP, do with it what you will. Another point you brought up was obviously the CBC and how already once the narrative has been set, now they're coming up with how they're going to spin this. Like you said, when the story first breaks, everyone's covering it. They can't, it's too early to put their spin, right? They're just kind of reacting to the situation. And that's kind of what we all seen. And me too. I was like, whoa, they're actually being pretty honest about this Canadian corruption in the news. And it was nice to see. But I think then, like you said, once time has has went by, now you got your people at top now coming in and be like, okay, here's the narrative. We're going to spin it, coming up with how they're going to spin this stuff. And what did we learn through this scandal? Well, we learned that, I forget which one of them was, but basically was telling Jody, like, hey, even if you think that if you side with letting this company off and passing what was it? What's the name again? The legislation.
Oh, the DPA, the Deferred Prosecution Agreement, that was literally brought into Canada for SNC level.
Exactly. So if she come out and did that, they were already telling her like, hey, don't worry, we got media. We can spin some propaganda.
Let me give you the exact quote, and then you can go on with it. Jerry said, Jess. Oh no, sorry, that's another one. Okay, she was like, if Jody is nervous, we would of course line up all kinds of people to write op-eds saying that what she is doing is proper.
Exactly. So, like you said, CBC's now is running their propaganda now that they've had time to come up with their spin story. All we're seeing is exactly what we know was going to happen because this is what they planned on happening if she actually went inside with this company, the SNC Lavalin or whatever. And this ties into as well Trudeau and all the media bailouts. How much? What was it, like hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars? Maybe it was $500 million or something insane that they gave to media companies this year. And, CBC is one that's funded by the taxpayer. Oh, my father just said 6 million. So
600 million, yeah.
600 million, exactly. So you think that in itself is not a bribe to the media to say, hey, if us liberals get in trouble or these scandals come up like this one, we will put the spin on for you. Thanks for the $600 million bailout because we can't keep our media company going because the alternative media is kicking our ass and all we do is spew propaganda and the population sees through that. So even the media itself is insider trading and insider deals. And that $600 million payoff, that in itself should be an RCMP investigation. I'll hand it over to my father if he's got anything else on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, and it doesn't even have to be a fully implicit or implied, threat or like as if it's fully conspiratorial in any way. It's just a simple fact that, yeah, hey, you're not going to bite the hand that feeds you, folks. Like I say, you don't even have to make it into a grand conspiracy in any form, like as if, ooh, everyone's out there, playing up the political talking points of the federal liberals. A lot of them will do it just because, hey, if you work for the government in any capacity or you're subsidized in any capacity by the government, hello, like I say, you're definitely not going to bite the hand that feeds you, but you're definitely not going to shoot yourself in your own proverbial foot either. So, of course, this only makes sense that these op-eds, and op-ed is just an opinion editorial based on the big wigs in any kind of news or media organization. So these are just the lowly lackeys. These are, like I say, the editorial board. These are the people that are your thought leaders, your opinion makers out there, and they're willing, well, basically what this was alluded to, this testimony, if it proves to be true, which I believe it is because her testimony seems very, very truthful. She seemed to be very meticulous in note-taking. But if this proves to be true, that's literally, I mean, it's great for people like myself that have been saying for years now that, hello, if you don't recognize that the establishment media is in the pocket of politicians, and you're just not paying attention, either that or you're using that kind of politically biased blinders that you just want to avoid or ignore reality completely. I mean, like I say, I suspected this without even hearing this. I've suspected for years, and so have a lot of Canadians, that the CBC in particular, of course, because it's a crown corporation, is basically the PR arm of the federal government. Now, they definitely they do choose, like it seems like the big wigs prefer the federal liberals over, say, the conservatives, but depending on who will scratch their back or protect each other, well, they'll cozy up with the conservatives too, or if their policies align with, once again, big government initiatives. It seems that it doesn't necessarily matter which political party that comes to power, but as long as they are all about creating a big government infrastructure in this country, which, once again, CBC fully relies on that. It's $1 billion+ crony corporation, crown corporation, that I don't think it could. I mean, there'd be some aspects of it that would survive and maybe thrive, without public funding. But you'd see a huge segment of the CBC that would actually, it would become unviable and bankrupt quite quickly, because the Canadian people, well, especially at least a large segment of the population that know that they just lied to them, would be unwilling to support them in any financial way, because, well, we can get, like I say, we live in the age of information, folks. So we can get information. We don't need this $1 billion+ crown or crony corporation to give us our news. We can get news, right? So we don't need this corporation anymore. But what I wanted to do, actually, get a little bit off track, is what I wanted to start out with this, but this is important, what we're talking about, what we're covering now. But like I said, I wanted to kind of deal with some of the history, because that's another thing. The political spin that I'm seeing from the media is all about this Libyan shit. And I understand why a lot of Canadians, right, whether they're from the right or the left side of the political aisle, might be more than willing to say, yeah, well, listen, man, they were in Libya. Of course, that's a corrupt country, right? That's how things are done in the Middle East. So I can understand where a lot of Canadians say, well, yeah, well, just because they were all about bribery or corruption or, handing dollars or paying off these people to get a particular government contract halfway around the world, well, that's just the way things are done over there. And that, I would actually say, you might have some excuse or validity there. But once again, even if you're saying, well, they all do everything bad there, so we should be bad or immoral people ourselves. Well, that's, once again, a race to the bottom. But that's not even the most important or pertinent point. What I wanted to get to is, I'm just going to be referencing a couple articles that I brought up to deal with this. So the first is, criminal case dropped for ex-SNC Lavalin exec Stéphane Roy due to delays. This is out of CTV News. Anyways, just read down here a little further, and it says Roy was facing charges of fraud over $5,000 and bribing a foreign public official in connection with the company's dealings with the regime. Okay, so this does have to do with Gaddafi. But then he was also charged later in 2014 in regards to these criminal proceedings. And this all has to do with not just Gaddafi, but you also have this thing with the hospital in Montreal, which I'm going to be referencing again as well here in the next story, which is this SNC Lavalin executive allegedly hid almost $25 million from Revenue Canada. So this agency says Sam Bibabi owes more than $1 million in unpaid taxes and fines on the hidden cash money and alleged come from kickbacks paid for by suppliers in exchange for contracts for SNC-Lavalin. But if you've heard about the Montreal hospital, once again, this is here even in Canada, in domestic Canada, not in foreign countries, where they've actually been caught bribing officials even for government contracts in Canada. So this isn't just a foreign story, folks. This is a story that's also domestic as well. And I mean, as much as people might want to make an excuse or give some kind of credibility to the, oh, we just have to do this to protect jobs. Well, like I mentioned to Matt actually before we went live, is as a construction worker myself, and I've been one for many years, I know damn well if the company that I work for, if they cease to exist tomorrow, yeah, it's not a hard thing. It's not difficult to go find yourself another job in the construction field or the industries. And that's what you're talking about for SNC-Lavalin. You're talking about engineers, right? You're talking about people in high demand, actually, to be honest with you, construction workers, people in the trade such as concrete or carpentry or finishing or electrical or plumbing, people, big infrastructure, right? Programs, truck drivers, crane operators. You telling me that these people, like Trudeau's trying to offer the excuse, oh, we just had to do this. Well, first of all, that's a political excuse. And that's literally exactly the opposite of what you're supposed to do. And you're not supposed to be using political interference, towards the prosecutor, or should I say the justice minister at this point, but this is what's happening. But the fact that they would suggest, or he would suggest or allude to the fact that it's to protect jobs they wouldn't go anywhere. And we've already heard how many times of the media put out and presented, and I've shared this in many past videos, where there's an extreme shortage. Why do you think we have this mass influx of not just the legal immigration, which is now ramped up to the tune of 350,000 people per year now that Trudeau Liberals have brought it up to. So which in just 3-year time frame, that's an extra million people, right? In a country with only 36 or 37 million. That's a huge demographic shift alone. But the fact that they keep saying in the cover they use as the reason why they do that, or the reason why they allow these illegal border crossers or asylum seekers or refugees to come across, hey, we need these laborers, we need these people to fill these skill shortages or labor shortages we have in this country. Well, wait a minute. No. There's a lot of people right here, as we see today, that can fill a lot of positions. Just all you have to do is give them the ability, or allow someone in this country to start up another company that can hire them and do better practices, better business practices, maybe treat them better, maybe not be so corrupt, and they'll still be able to get business done. So there will be lots of infrastructure projects that can get done in Canada without the need for bringing in massive amounts of legal or illegal immigrants, if you would just allow the actual market to dictate where these people should be done or put into their positions. Because like I say, if SNC-Lavalin, I mean, I've worked for places that have gone out of business. You just go get another job. And if you're competent at your job, if you're skilled, then you won't be hard to find. As a matter of fact, you might even be able to negotiate for a higher wage. So actually, not only am I opposing the excuse that Trudeau's gives as far as jobs, hey, these people might actually be better off economically or financially as a result from having skills that are in greatly demand in Canada.
Yeah, so I want to just take a moment to zoom out of everything right now for a second. And this is exactly the reason why me and my father are libertarians. You could call us anarcho-capitalists. Basically, that we understand at a fundamental level that money has power. Money is influence, okay? And let's use real life examples. Let's say I asked you to eat something disgusting, and you said no, and then I asked you to eat something disgusting for $1,000. It may sway your opinion, or $1 million. Or I asked you to run around and do a block around the building, and you're like, no, I'm not too lazy, I'm going to do that. But I asked you $100, you'll do it. Money, I'm getting at, influences decisions. A lot of people make the joke that everyone has an amount, right? If I give you a certain amount of something, I'll give you $1 billion to do that. If it was a real life scenario and you were getting $1 billion, you may even do things that may even go against your moral code. So this is the reason why we must have a system where it takes that bribery, that money, that power completely out of the equation. Taxes, the basis of taxes, we've been through this many times, it's theft, principally, morally. It's taking money without consent. It's not giving it up voluntarily. And because of that, and because of the structure of our government and how we have our society's organized today, it incentivizes this power structure with money and influence. And there's too much money in politics, and that's why it's vital to get someone like a Maxime Bernier, or even someone more extreme than him, in to start ratcheting back this huge government organization that's taken over and controlling us. And this money talk scenario, it plays into media and government contracts. You know, if you're bidding on a contract and you got one person who's bidding 100,000 and you're bidding 100,000, but you're actually secretly going behind closed doors and telling that person you're bidding to that, hey, I'll send you to Hawaii, I'll give you all the booze in this, but we got to keep that off the record. But I'm going to sweeten the deal. So on the whole, it looks like, oh, we're offering the same deal, but you're going to side with me because, well, my competitor doesn't know we got these behind closed doors dealings that I'm going to sweeten the pot. This is what happened with SNC, except it was for Gaddafi, it was prostitutions and all this other stuff he was doing. And, you know, and with the media, you're not, if you own a media company and the guy who owns it and he's the one pooling all the money into it, are you going to go run a tabloid ad that's going to smear him and make him look bad and potentially bankrupt your media organization and take your head down? No. Well, the same with Trudeau buying $600 million to these media companies to bribe them to not run ads against him the way that you see today with the propaganda. So my point at and why I was zooming out is everything we talk about today, no matter what, it's all boiling down to the same root problem. We need to take money out of politics. We need to structure our societies and governments in a way that we don't have this problem. You know, if we had a voluntary-based system rather than a predatory tax of system that's theft and coercion, it would eliminate all the problems we talk about. But here, because we're in this government system, we have to continually educate the public with these stories and constantly say, see, this is more reason why you don't trust government with money, and understand that basic human beings are fallible. We all have a number. Money influences people, and it makes them do crazy, irrational decisions, even the most moral people, and this is why we're running into these problems. I'll pass off to my father to delve more into it.
Yeah, actually, no, I'm glad you brought that up because actually that was one part I didn't put as a point to cover today, but it's very important, is this pretense of white-collar crime. I hear this so many times, even young man. This is nothing new, folks. Even as a young man, I remember growing up and hearing people talk about, oh, like trying to basically soothe anyone's concerns in regards to white-collar crime. And if you're young or ignorant to facts or if you don't understand economics, this is actually one of the most fundamental parts why I think understanding economics in its proper sense is so important for people, because it gives you an understanding, a fundamental understanding on human labor and the value of it, right? So when you're talking about blue collar crime, whether you should go back to like bailing out, you know, the auto sector, like, you know, plundering the Canadian taxpayers, because that's what you're doing, right? So if you're, if you're bailing out any organization or you're redistributing money in any way, or bribery or fraud that has and does involve large sums of money, which is what we're talking about today, is that when you're talking about money, that money is a representation. If you understand economics and labor and how that plays out, that money is a direct representation of your labor. So most Canadians, most people around the world would already say, if you ask them, do you support slavery? Oh, wouldn't even take them 2 seconds. Their mind is already understanding, if they're a moral person, that slavery is bad, right? But if you're stealing or plundering people's incomes, you know, it doesn't matter how much you're plundering them to. It's a level, it's a variance in the level of slavery. But if you're taking and redistributing wealth, which is what the governments basically do, picking winners or losing the economy, or like I say, whether these bribery or fraud charges, how it folds or plays out, and these companies are, you know, getting government contracts to the tunes of millions of dollars. Well, who do you think pays for all these government contracts? Like that hospital in Montreal, you know, whether it costs, let's say, $100 million. Well, I know a bridge that SNC Lavalin built in New Brunswick, because I was one of those people that actually was driving a concrete truck at the time. But let's say you're talking about $100 million that the government's spending. Well, they're passing that money out to these crony corporations that, as we realize, they're just squandering and pissing a lot of that money away, or benefiting themselves or their crony counterparts, or maybe giving a little backhand to someone in the government for helping creating this legislation. You know, maybe Trudeau or some of his lackeys will be on the board of SNC Lavalin someday if the company doesn't completely go into insolvency because of this. But think about it, economic enslavement. That's what we're talking about, basically. So whether it's on a small scale of death by 1,000 cuts, so they only take, you know, a small portion of your income here, or it's the plunder of the future income. Because that's another thing I always try to point out to Canadians all the time, is because the debts and deficits are so high in this country domestically, that actually the money, any money that's now being propagated, or the debts and deficits, is basically enslaving future generations to pay for the people in the here and now. So SNC Lavalin, or these corporations, or big government, or all this stuff is basically economically enslaving not just the Canadians that are alive today, but even future successive generations and the unborn at this point in time, to pay for all this bribery, to pay for all this corruption. So to me, that is white collar crime is every bit. I mean, think about it. You as a person, right? And I mean, I've had my bicycle. I had someone live in my house when I had to rent it out that stole my four-wheeler, a one of a kind, a very rare, amazing machine that I had. To me, the way I looked at it, because I understand economics properly, people looked at, oh, it's just a four-wheeler, man. That's whatever. Hey, you still got, but you know what? Because of all the money that I put into that, and because I was a long-haul truck driver, that tells me, and when I take into the dollar value, that's basically saying that for about a third of the year, me being gone away from my family, all that work, all that effort I put in, it wasn't for my benefit. Now, all of a sudden, someone else got to take that benefit from me. So how is that any different than being economically enslaved to another individual? And in this situation, it's not even the individual, it's an entire group. Well, it's called government, or these crony corporations that use government legislation to plunder my income, or the income of my son, or the income of maybe his potential children at some point in time. So that kind of white collar crime. Now, I'm tired of people using this kind of bullshit excuse that it just has to do with money. Listen, money is a representation of your value, of your labor, of your productivity. That means that they have the capacity and the ability to economically enslave you in some way. That's immoral in any, no matter how you try to look at it, right?
Well, here's the sad thing about human psychology. It's easier to hate the guy who comes in with a hoodie and a gun and holds you and up and robs you. You can physically see that representation of rob. You can see the physical threat. And it's sad, though. It's like you said, it's the blue collar crime. It's the crime high up in politicians. You know, they're pillaging the country of millions and millions of dollars in these scandals and this taxes and stuff like that. But yet you can, at a visceral level, hate the guy who comes in and robs the convenience store for a couple $1,000s. And it's hard to try to get people to understand that, no, there's a lot more hardened crime that actually goes unnoticed. That most smart criminals, the most violent acts of against humanity, happen at the top echelons, and they've had years and years and years of how to master these structural societies. You know, you got the Roman Empire, you got the Greeks. They've mastered this over years and years. How do we get the population to submit? How can we ratchet up the taxes? How can we ratchet up the authoritarian violations of their rights without giving them the opportunity to resist? Or, you know, they want, it's like the boiling frog in a pot. You know, they just creep. And that's their tactic, because tomorrow, if we just woke up and they just, you know, if we were taxed 50%, tomorrow they just took it all, well, that would just make you react too fast. So they make it slow. And you know, we have to start catching on to this and reeling it back, because where does it go, people? That's always my question when I'm talking to people from the left or the right. What's left? Where's the end road here? Government already spies on us. They already tax majority, at least 50% in some cases, even more of your wealth. You know, as you see, money in politics has completely ruined it. There's a double standard in the justice system. What are you willing to take? Where is the line in the sand? Is it literally shackles on you? Do you literally need to be a slave? Do you need to be represented with the actual look down and be cuffed to something and be like, oh, okay, now I'm a slave? You can't understand you're a financial slave through this. Like even with slavery, you know, a guy who had to go out and pick cotton. What did they have to do? They had to feed him, because if they didn't, he wouldn't be a productive worker. They had to give him a home, because they couldn't just let him die. That's their worker. They need him to be able to produce and pick the cotton. So they gave him the basics of life: shelter, food, water. Did he have a great lifestyle? Absolutely not. I'm not saying slaves had a great lifestyle, but his master gave him the basics. Well, government now has gotten smart. They know they can't just whip you out on the slave field anymore. They just give you the basics, though. They give you the welfare systems. It ain't a great welfare system. They give you the roads, potholes, shitty roads. It's 2019. Maybe we have flying cars. Who knows? They give you the basics to keep you on leash, at heel, and, you know, all the more reason why we need to wake up to the real problem, which is the institution itself. And I hope this is a rallying point for those on the right or those on the left. I even listen to, like I said, people like pure blown anarcho-capitalists, people like Stefan Molyneux, and then I listen to people like Young Turks. And on each end of the perspective, we can both agree money in politics ruins it. You know, even these Andrew Cortez and all these socialists, Bernie and all these socialists in America, politicians, and here in Canada, Trudeau, he even spouses, oh, money in politics is bad. Okay, well, stop with the talk. We need to get it out. That's going to be the solution. Remove the money out of the politics, and we'll clean up a lot of this problem.
Yeah, the fatality of fascism. That's the way I look at it. It's just a modern form of slavery, but they do it on a much better scale and with a much better sales tactic and a much better narrative. So I think about, just compare it to, you know, no wonder communism and socialism fails rather quickly, because a communist or a socialist, right? So a communist was basically someone that wants to bring that kind of ideology to the world. A socialist, especially a national socialist such as Hitler or so, well, they're predominantly concerned with their own national identity or their particular state. So whether you're talking about globalism like communism or socialism as far as like national identities, fascism, which was the underlying aspect of not just Italy, but the German experiment, the reason why it proved to be much more successful and required like an entire gigantic army from, look at the size of Russia in comparison to Germany back in the day, or the whole Allies, right? But what it is even the Western Allies subsequent to World War II, they realized, oh shit, yeah, these fascists, they're much smarter than the average bear, rather than communists or socialists that, you know, want to take over the means of production. So think about it. If you're a business owner or corporate or someone that owns I can't say corporation because that's illegal fishing created by government. But say you're a business owner at any point in time, whether it's in Eastern Europe or anywhere in Europe in the past or in North America in modern day. Well, if someone comes over to take over your means of production, well, you're not going to allow that. So that means imposed violence upon you. So there's an incentive for you to be like, oh, I don't like these motherfuckers. Well, they used violence. They took me out of my job, right? They took our fucking jobs. That's what the communists and the socialists would do. They want to take over the means of production. So they actually get rid of the figurehead, the person that actually started the business. What fascists understood, right? These national socialists that understood fascism very intrinsically is no. These people that started the business, no, you don't go kick them out and replace them with some inept fucking government lackey that's going to fuck everything up for us. No. You give them, say, hey, you can stay in your business. You can remain, the president or CEO of your business. The only thing we ask of you or require or actually demand of you, but the sales tactic would be the same way, is we're just going to ask you that, but you just got to follow along with our rules. That's all. But hey, if you follow along with our rules, not only will we allow you to maintain your position as the CEO of this corporation, you'll have power beyond belief because you'll have us in your back pocket. And hey, we're the government. We can write the rules in your favor if you want. So the fascists were just like the slaves in the back in the old day, or I should say the plantation owners back in the old day. And if you ever watched Larkin Rowe's video, what was it called? Something about a plantation, but you got to watch it someday. I'll post a link to it in this description of this video. But yeah, the slave owners realized, it's really hard to keep these slaves on our plantation. They keep running away. But they figured, hey, if we just tell them that they're not slaves anymore, that, hey, they're actually part of the business. Hey, you're not slaves, you're employees, and we respect you, and we want to hear your opinions. If you give them the right incentive, the right narrative, you can turn the concept of that they're really still slaves after all. But hey, if you trick them or convince them that they don't believe they're slaves, now they're actually just productive members or employees within the organization, well, they'll go along with your business model or your business practice or your corrupt nature. And that's what the fascists realized early on. And that's why today in Western societies, we're pivoting so far away from the classical liberalism of Adam Smith or proper economics in regard to Austrian economics as far as free markets, right? Like people like Hayek and such, or understand about private property, John Locke. We're now pivoting to, once again, as you see, and it's been rampant actually ever since World War II, is what a lot of people realize in Western powers, we definitely wanted to take down Hitler, right? The big wigs in Western powers, we want to get rid of Hitler and his bunch, but we definitely want to adopt a lot of the practices because we recognize how successful they were in doing so and implementing that and creating that tribal mentality, because that's the other aspect. You got to create a tribal mentality. It's all about us versus them. And it works out perfectly. So the way I look at it today is fascism is very much in existence and very much in fashion. Fascism is very much in fashion. The problem is the Canadian people, because they're inundated constantly with, or American people for that matter, inundated with information presented by them that people that work for the fascist state, they're not going to tell you the truth. They're going to tell you that, no, this is all, like I said, you'll get those political narratives that will suggest you're not a slave. No, you're just part of our, our big group. Doesn't that feel all warm and cozy and comfortable?
And yeah, I would say that these ideas, people, are important. They're so important that you can see by just flying over South Korea and North Korea at night, and you can see the difference just in ideology and how you structure your society. Okay, one is dark, one people are being starved, no technological advancements, and you got South Korea just next to it. Now that's the same culture. They're both Koreans, so you can't make the argument that, well, this is two different people, two different cultures. That is a total difference just by pure ideology and how the country is run. Now, another example you could use is America, 300 and some million people. China, billions. How is it that America creates more wealth with 300 and some million people than a country with billions? Now, you can even, even the race baiters that want to bring up race and IQ, by their own analogy, Asian people have got a higher IQ than white people. So you can't even play the IQ aspect, because by that ratio, China's got billion people compared to 300 some million. Why are they not making way more? There's more people productive that could be working, that could be contributing. There should be more wealth. All comes down to the ideology and the structure of the civilization, the society. You got communists. You got America, republic, somewhat free market. So this is why this stuff is important, people, because literally adhering to freedom creates prosperity, creates the world map where it looks like today, where we got cars, where we got homes, we got electricity. So can you imagine where we would be if we took this heel off our neck? And that's what really frustrates me, and really what keeps me up at night, knowing where we could be. And that's, I think, what drives me crazy, because I have that perspective to see, whoa, can you imagine? You got the media, you got the alternative, or you got the mainstream media, you got Facebook, you got all these social platforms, everyone just pounding, trying to censor our beliefs, trying to censor us, saying that, these freedom principles and stuff like that are bad. Government's great. You got the media against us. You got the normal population who can't even understand these things, who are against you. If you talk taxation stuff, they look at you like you got three heads. So can you imagine if we just got through and actually didn't have this boot on our neck and could actually try the experiment of freedom without being unmolested by all these statists? Well, we know what would happen. It's why America went from nothing to where it is today in such a short time, while still being somewhat with a boot over its neck. So literally, I'm telling you, people, if you started adhering to these principles, if we can make liberty popular again, if we can start taking back our countries, we're literally talking about cancer cures. We're literally talking about renewable energy. We're literally talking about polluting or populating the stars, and, advancements to our health. We got people all the time complaining, there's people dying of all these diseases. We're fighting wars in the Middle East that are blowing up trillions of dollars in bombs, when this money could be going to things that are more productive. Yeah. So this is why people like me and my father are so angry and get up every day and do these podcasts, because you are literally stifling us reaching to the stars, stifling our potential as humanity. And I'll pass it off.
Yeah, that's actually, I just wrote down, because as you were talking, it made me think of it, is the degradation of proper incentives. And I remember even hearing years ago, someone else helped explain to me, so when socialized healthcare, whether it's in Canada or the US, well, the US Medicare and Medicaid is fully socialized, although at this point with Obamacare thrown into it is pretty close to that point. But, or let's just use the UK for example. But so let's say you were a doctor that was going through, because socialized healthcare in Canada was what, in the 50s and 60s predominantly is when it really started getting ramped up. But if you were a doctor that was already a doctor and very proficient at your duties, even when they pivot away from a proper market structure and incentive, which is what all doctors prior to the socialized healthcare system in Canada, they were all trained and well-versed under the market structures, right? Of appealing to your customer base, and all the proper ethics that were involved in being a doctor and doing no harm. So once you pivot to a socialized incentive structure, which is what we see today, you're not going to destroy the incentive of those people. The people that are already competent doctors, or like lawyers, or all business owners, or what, people that run small companies or whatever, whoever you're talking about, is because the incentive structures might have changed because of some government policy or legislation, but the people, like I know even myself, even after, you know, the government destroyed a lot of my ability to have a job, well, in the trucking field, I like to be it hasn't changed my psychology or my competence level, right? So a doctor could still practice in a socialized healthcare system for decades and still be very competent. Now, eventually over time, you will see that erosion of the proper incentive, and maybe their performance might you see even those people might start to degrade in due time or in due course. But then it's always the matter of each individual or each successive generation. So the younger people that are born today that weren't born and raised and functioned under anything that are even remotely resembling a private or an actual market-driven business structure as far as healthcare or any other business model, well, if they don't understand even how that functions or how that works, well, now the new normalized behaviors is to function under a top-down authoritarianism, under a socialized net. So then they figure out how to function within that system. But then they're unwilling to recognize that they don't even have the proper incentives that their forebears or the people that actually, you know, were the most competent people in their industries. So now you're measuring people compared to, you know, so let's say a whole new generation of people that are born and raised under socialized healthcare. I mean, you still have variances levels as far as the competence level, but I guarantee the most competent people under socialized healthcare system are still much more inferior to those under a free market type of system. So you'll still have like some kind of variables as far as a hierarchy, as far as competency, but it's still greatly reduced when you compare them to those who are raised or produced under free market incentive structures. So today, what we're seeing today, as like I say, that healthcare is just one clear example to use. But today, you know, people in lots of different areas of the economy or business or politics, it's that race to the. So every time you degrade the proper incentive structure, then people figure out that, well, we've got to function in this new incentive structure. So I would never suggest, like, even when I hear lefties out there, especially anarchists that are considered like communists, more or less, they always go against the corporations. Oh, it's the corporations. But listen, as much as there are a lot of bad actors within these organizations or corporations, because they function in an environment like today, even myself, if I want to start a business, I almost got to become a fascist, right? Otherwise, because I can't function in a private free market environment because one doesn't exist. So if I want to start a business today, and that's not because I want to be a fascist, not because I want government help or subsidies or any ability to escape being held accountable, but if I want to compete out there today in the economic environment, because everyone else has to function under that top-down government authoritarian structures of fascism, well, if I want to compete, the only way I'm going to be able to compete is be a fascist myself and actually be a much more successful fascist. So that's say the success rate for fascism might be higher at that point, but the degradation of morality and proper ethics as far as business practice has been greatly reduced as well. So, you know, being the best in a field of the worst, like I say, that's a terrible motive. But that's what we're seeing out there today is now everyone, like in the economic sphere or in the political sphere or in the media sphere, everyone now, it's not that like the natural incentive things where we constantly raise and elevate each other. That's a natural, like a free market incentive structure is we constantly try to outcompete or raise or elevate each other. In a top-down authoritarian government type structure or a fascist type structure, it's that raised to the lowest common denominator is, oh, they're corrupt, but I'll do a much better job of being corrupt. Or, hey, well, they might be able to lobby government for your political favors or legislation that lays them political cover for any of their scrupulous actions or behaviors. Well, hey, I better do a better job doing that myself, because if I don't, well, I'm going to lose out in this competition. So once again, we have to understand in a proper incentive structure, which is what the free market represents, and free market just means free people that don't have the ability to economically or socially enslave other people for the bad habits or behavior. So we want the instruction in proper incentive structure where we're raising and elevating each other, which, like Matt alluded to, is, I mean, the sky's the limit, folks. Look at what we're already succeeding, and we're even succeeding with basically, you know, the fascistic boot on most people's head, and we still have this amount of amazing economic success and entrepreneurs out there. Think of how much better it would be if we didn't have that proverbial boot on our face or on our head every day.
Yeah, and I think most people, as our technology gets more and more advanced and our way of lifestyle gets more and more comfortable and easy, you know, running water, bathtubs, dishwashers, you know, all these appliances and all these technologies that makes our day-to-day life so much easier, and also crime rates are going down, we're losing touch with how the real world works. Back in the days when it was tougher way of life and there was death everywhere, you know, people understood that there's dangers in the world, and there's predator humans lurking around. See, most people are good people. I do believe that. Most people are come from a decent heart, and and if you're of that mindset, even like me, it's hard to understand how someone who's a predator thinks. You don't understand because, like, let's use the example of how to murder a child. Most people are like, I couldn't imagine holding a child down and murdering it. Like, that's insane. But there's actually people out there, even probably today, that are doing that as we do this podcast. So you need to understand that when you set up a structure of government the way it is, and it has these roles of power that can be manipulated because we have fallible human beings out there, that these predators are going to go for those positions of power. The same way we see all too often, whether it's with the pedophilia, you see, oh, he happened to be a gym coach, or he happened to be a school teacher, or, someone who's into money and corruption goes into, Wall Street and all that kind of stuff. So people are going to go into these positions and abuse them. And we have to realize that, and we have to realize that we need to eliminate that possibility, because it's going to happen. It's inevitable. There's bad people in the world. And I don't know where I was going to go with that. I'll pass.
Oh, no, that's okay, because actually I'll just step in right now, because actually you brought something I was thinking about, and I was like, I don't want to forget about it. That's why I typed down. Sorry, because my stupid keyboard makes those noises. Yep. Sorry, folks. But anyways, yeah. So this, what Matt has alluded to is forced association. So like I say, whether it's you in your own personal life, in your family, or in some community setting, or in a big government society type structure, think about it. If you're a father or a mother of children or grandchildren, if your exchange is completely and wholly voluntary, you have to succumb and be willing to abide by some proper morals and ethics and principles to get those people to even want to have any kind of relationship with you. That's something, like I said, you don't need a top-down structure for people to understand that we should treat each other with some kind of reciprocal respect and dignity if we want to see that return to us, right? But with government, government is like as if you were the father. Let's say you could have a contract. Government is a contract that says, we are your rightful rulers, although they suggest they're your representatives. But basically, they have this so-called social contract that they are your rightful authority, right? If you as a parent could raise your kids for all of eternity, no matter, even when they turned 18, right, or turned to be a teenager, you still had this pretense that, no, I'm still always going to be your authority. Always and forever, I'm always going to be your authority. I'm always going to be the one that sets the rules and how our relationship goes out. Well, think about how dysfunctional that relationship would be if you could force them to associate with you, right? You could treat your kids like garbage. Just, plunder them once as soon as they turn 15 or whatever. And hey, get out there and get yourself a paper route job. And as soon as they come back after getting their first, month paycheck from their paper route, I'm taking all your money, or at least a portion of it. I mean, if they decide at one point in time, it's like, no, you should. What before? I worked for that. You didn't do it. I want to keep my money. Is that okay? No. Well, if you could constantly force them to do it, well, then think about the strain that's going to put on your personal relationship. Well, that's the same with government. It's basically forced association, which is why it's so fucking dysfunctional, which is why the only thing that properly functions is the free market. People get scared when they hear the free market because they think, well, because of these collectivists or these central planner types or these control freaks, they constantly try to jam into people's head that, oh, no, free market. Ooh, that's scary. Freedom is scary. Today, when I even talk to people, it's like, I scratched my head. I was like, are you really that scared of freedom? Or are you so incompetent? Are you so, have such an inferior intellect that you believe you're just no good for nothing unless somebody's dictating, controlling every aspect? Like, to me, the psychology and the degradation of a person's self-esteem is so detrimental that people are willing to listen to this kind of rhetoric without accepting and acknowledge the fact that it's the free market is the only way. So whether you're talking about holding governments to account or corporations to account or bad actors, in as far as the deep state or the bureaucrat, the only way we can hold anyone to account is to actually have the freedom to do so. And that's what the free market represents, because it means we're not forced or thrust into any particular relationship. So economics, as far as insurance or telecoms, if the government can constantly force you into the relationship, right, you're not going to have a proper relationship where you're going to hold each other to account. At some point in time, you're always going to feel where somebody is the subordinate and somebody is the authority. And then once again, the incentive structure, well, the subordinate that recognizes that they're always and forever going to be a slave because the other person gets to write the rules that dictates the terms of their relationship. Well, there's no incentive for this subordinate to ever try to achieve or attain any amount of personal success for themselves. So once again, whether it's social or economic, or even as far as your morals or ethics or your code or your principles, always comes down to at least giving people the ability to hold each other to proper accountability and having the ability to associate freely.
Yeah, I remember where I was going with that now. So I was going into about how there's predators lurking in our society, that all of us humans don't come from that same loving, compassionate perspective, that there are actually people out there that get off and want to hurt people. So that is your elite class. That is your deep staters, okay? And people have a hard time understanding that. But if you're, let me just give a scenario for you, okay? You're one of these deep staters. You're one of these families that have been in the power and politics for a long time, multi-generational in some cases, and you're surrounded by wealthy politicians and aristocrats yourself. You don't really mingle with the general poor, poverty public or the general working class. You kind of get this chip on your shoulder that you're better than everyone else. And then maybe in some scenarios, you might be just by the pure ambitious and the amount of wealth you can create and the intelligence gap and stuff like that. But these people who are pulling the strings, the deep staters, they know, like they said, they know that they're taxing us through the ass. They're spying on us. They take our money and squander it and make themselves rich. They do insider deals. And they look at us, literally, this is the mindset of a deep stater. They look at you as the average public person as dog shit on the bottom of their shoe. They look at you as, look at what we can do to these people. And they still don't take up arms and revolt. So this is the mindset of these people. They're like, they think that they're control freaks, like my father said. They think they know how to run the world best, and they're going to make the most money for themselves, for their own family, for their own prodigy and bloodlines, because the average public are stupid idiots and they don't know what they're doing. You see, you can rule them, you can take their money, you can spy on them, and they don't resist. So we have to do this, because if we don't, these idiots will be running around shitting in the streets. This is how these people think of you. They think of you as idiots. And you know, the way they think of it is they're going to do their own breakaway civilization. If you don't think technology today that is in these deep underground facilities and this black budget and, you know, the intelligence agencies, the stuff that the public doesn't know. Okay, I mean, I always use the example. Look at the Blackbird. What is the plane? SR-71 Blackbird in the 1960s, the 70s. Basically looked like the same thing out of the not Star Wars movies, the X-Men movies. But basically, when you've seen that plane flying in the early 60s, you would think, holy shit, is this a freaking spacecraft from an alien? Like, it's unreal what that thing looks like. And to this day, we don't really hear of anything after that, right? They still say, oh, that's one of the best planes ever invented. You don't know what the government has now. You don't know the hidden technologies, the trillions and trillions of dollars spent on these black budgets through our government. Same with Canada. We have a black budget as well. You know, so the elite, the deep staters, the people who are up there in high politics, who understand these concepts and understand these inner workings of these intelligence agencies, they know, holy shit, we really have stuff that we're on the brink of maybe making us live 50 to 100 years longer. We have stuff that can make us go into space. We have stuff that we can start colonizing other planets. And they're like, we don't want to give it to these idiots who are shitting in the streets, who can't even resist any kind of resistance. We could literally rape and abuse their families and pillage them and tax them through the ass, and they don't do nothing. So we're not going to give that to them because they're undeserving. And I'm just trying to get you the mindset of these Trudeaus and these people who's been in power their whole life and been surrounding themselves with these high-end aristocrats. This is how they think of you people. They know that they got the technologies. They don't want to share it with you. And that's why there's such a struggle for power right now, because what are they going to do if someone like a Trump or someone gets in there like he is and they start ratcheting back government, or they start releasing these texts? Hey, did you know we actually do have a cancer cure, but we haven't released it yet because Big Pharma has been lobbying a bunch of our politicians, and it's too much money if we can just give a temporary fix for cancer, because, you know, an average cancer patient is maybe $200,000 to $1 million to actually fix them through the healthcare system. Why would we want to give them a cure and boom, now we don't get any money? They're fixed. They go home. They're healthy. You know, all these alternative medicines, you know, the main reasons why I think a lot of the drugs are illegal too, you know, because if you have legalized drugs and the free market and the free, you know, there's no black market, and the government likes to rely on the black market because it's money that's off the books. You know, we've you know, Iran-Contra people, we've known the government has dealings with drugs. You know, they set up these structures and infrastructures that make it easy for the black market to to come to fruition. They probably love drugs being all illegal, because then it creates the black market, and they got their own skin in the game in the black market, and now that's money that they can use off the budget. We know that North Korea does this as well. We've heard even in state-run media here in Canada and the United States, what they say all the time, Kim Jong-un sells drugs and does other kind of illegal acts to also increase his state budget, so he can also do stuff off the record to build his nuclear arsenal. Now, they'll go and say that about North Korea right on CBC, but you don't think Canada does it as well? You don't think Canada's doing a little drug dealing, Iran-Contra themselves, to get a little black budget money? So people need to understand all these things and understand where it comes from. And if you can get in that mindset of how these people think, you can understand, oh, yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, this is why when I go into my parliament, they all look at me like, get out of here, you subhuman. You don't got no rights. That's why I have freedom of speech. You don't got freedom of speech. We took that from you. And you look, you guys, what, come out and picket signs and then go home after? It's a joke. The public is seen as a joke to the ruling class, to the elite.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that all comes down to this. Well, it's all collectivism is a devastating aspect. And what collectivism means, just look it up, folks, is basically the sacrifice of the individual for any concept of the greater good. Now, that sounds good in some kind of theory or principle, like from the abstract. Well, yeah, we care about the greater good, but no, because that's the problem is when you think about that, and I've alluded to this in the past, is sacrificing the individual could mean you could be sacrificing one of the most principled, moral, or ethical individuals for this pretense of the greater good, which is basically a collective of terrible individuals. So you're basically forcing or subjugating the good person to the whims or the ideology of some bad people. So no, the respect of the individual, and as far as when you're talking about business practices, rather than using big giant collectives as a means to an end, if individuals, so instead of government to government, when you're talking about drugs or some of these life-saving things that we need today, because corporations in conjunction with big government have the ability to make a lot of our the things that we need or required, because they don't have a market fundamental or market-driven forces as the pretense to create a price mechanism or a price floor, then now you see the cost of drugs and stuff are ridiculously priced. But what it is governments, collectives, that are basically saying that, no, we have to be the ones that get to dictate and determine economic output or economic decisions. Whereas if individual actors were involved, well, they'd find a way. Like humans have that competitive spirit of, well, every living organism has completely built into our DNA, in our code, to be competitive, because it's one thing that keeps us striving and surviving, right? That's literally the whole point of procreation, is you have to be competitive to make sure that we're the ones that survive. So in that, and that works out, like I say, because it's built into our biology, it's a composition of what it is to be a human being, then you got to follow through with that proper incentive structure. And that's the best way. That's why, like I say, geniuses such as Adam Smith in the past realized that, no, we don't even have to rely on the benevolence of the butcher and baker, as he alluded to. No, we just have to rely on the fact that they're going to want to take care of themselves. And because they're going to want to take care of themselves, if you give them that proper incentive structure, which is the free market, the invisible hand, then they'll do it not because you have to force or impose your ideas on them or your whims or your edicts on them, but they'll do it because it's a benefit for them. It's a benefit for society. Everybody benefits on a proper incentive structure. Whereas if it's done in an authoritarian regime, well, then it's just a matter of people looking at ways where they can benefit themselves at the expense of everyone else, because they now have the ability. Because what government is, and I've said this so many times in the past, I feel like I'm constantly repeating myself, but it's just something that most Canadians, I don't seem to understand this, but government is a monopoly of force of violence. That's what government is, folks. It's a big, gigantic, invisible gun in the room that has this amazing capacity that whatever they decide, they get to point that gun at you and say, you have to do what we say. Well, when you give certain particular actors in any particular government or country the ability to point that proverbial gun at your head and make you or impose their will or mandates or edicts on you, well, then there is no the proper incentive structure. You're going to do what you have to do, not because you want to, not because it's the right thing to do, not because it's moral or ethical, but because you have to. So that's a complete destruction of not just in the economic sphere, but in the social sphere as well.
What's so funny is we started this podcast as we're going to try to get into SNC Lavalin, but while we're on all these tangents, it's so I feel like going Alex Jones here in a sec because I'm not mad at
the fucking frog.
Yeah. No, but it's so fucking frustrating that we're sitting here having these conversations about SNC and shit because it's like, well, yeah, what did you think was going to happen with a structured society like this? It's like you took a car, you filled it with a bunch of electronics and expensive products, you took it down to the most violent and craziest neighborhood, and you're like, holy shit, the car got broke into. SNC Lavalin, oh my God, the news is freaking out. Well, what the fuck did you think was going to happen? Oh, politicians bribing and money. Of course, this is how the system's set up, okay? And this is what we've been screaming about for 10 years. So then now I go on my goddamn Facebook feed. I see some of, people now finally starting to talk about Canadian corruption in politics. This shit is not news, okay? Seriously. And this is what the elite are very good at doing. This is another 4D chess game I'm going to explain to you really quick right now. It's talk about all these scandals, because you're not talking about the real scandal, which is the fucking architect of this structure of how we do our government. Let's get to the bigger problem here. Let's stop talking about, oh, it's corrupt down here, SNC. Let's get to the root of the problem, what we've covered in this podcast. You won't have these fucking stories every week. It's annoying. It's stupid. And, all the free speech debate, Jordan Peterson, let's talk. All this shit is a friggin' distraction mechanism. Why are we infighting and talking about all these inner little corruptions and problems and the build the wall and this and that? If we had the root of the problem fixed, none of this would be happening. And that's why it's frustrating for people like me, my father, or anyone who's the term woke, they like to say, woke if you're woke. It's just bullshit. It's like, we're not shocked. Everyone else today is talking about SNC, and that's why we've almost just rambled about other things, because it's a non-issue. Of course SNC was happening. And you know what? That's just one time they got caught. There's so much SNC incidents and corruption and bribery and all this stuff. That's because that's what the foundation of the system is. Jeez. The fact that even someone can donate and lobby to all these politicians should be illegal in itself. With any kind of news organization, even me and my father, alternative media, anyone, if there's a big person who's donating $1 million to our media organization, our little thing, any of our viewers better question that and say, is there any influence with that money? And that's right. We should have that opinion. We should be able to question that, because money influences things. So, even with, that's why alternative media does so well, and these CBCs and all these CNNs and bigger corporations don't, because there's these big, powerful lobbying, these big money. So I'm donating $1 million to CNN. Don't run any negative ads about me. Whereas all these podcasts and alternative media, why they're so successful is they're based on individual donations. So there's no really big ones. You got the rare Koch brother billionaire who will donate maybe to a Steven Crowder. Maybe I'm wrong about Steven Crowder, but I'm just picking a name. Sorry, Steven, if he doesn't donate to you. But what I'm getting at is sometimes you will get like the Blaze who took over, these big ones. And yes, that's why we should look at that and be like, Steven, we see this financial decision. It's not saying that you're no longer a good conservative or a good person, but we're definitely going to be careful now how you judge and how you talk about the Koch brothers, because there's an incentive not to. This is why Joe Rogan got in trouble with his podcast, because he had Jack Dorsey on, but he didn't disclose that Jack Dorsey also owns Square, which donates $3 million to Joe Rogan's podcast a year. So, and Joe said, whoops, yeah, I didn't know that was going to be a big issue. Of course. So just be careful with all these things. Anytime there's big donations or money involved, look at it and have that skeptical eye.
Yeah, well, that's the hilarious part, is even if any of that was true, and I've heard so many stories about the Koch brothers, actually, that's how they pronounce it, is Koch, actually. But these would be like libertarian-ish, right? That's
yeah,
what
the one libertarian-ish billionaires, like the one. Right. We only got one.
Right. No, but either way, the part that that drives me crazy when I hear people that try to go against, like I say, the Koch brothers, or even like, I'll even bring in fucking Soros for this. Listen, this is the thing. If someone has the ability, so whether it's, like I say, if you're a deep state bureaucrat or someone that's in the entrenched political parties or the media pundits, or what, if you have some backing by CBC has the backing of the federal government, like $1 billion. So as much as, yes, I agree, like, I don't like this participation in this race to the lowest common denominator, and I won't do it. That's why I'm poor. That's why I don't, like, I still have my little cheap little setup here. And that's why I got no backing. Why? Because I don't care for that shit. But when I do see that other people that are turning to, maybe some billionaires to help fund them so they can offer a counter narrative, I'm still saying that's still a bit of a race to the bottom. But once again, I'm not going to constantly point out the people that, first of all, if I keep pointing out the people that are trying to stand for liberty, and they're like, well, I just don't have any money, I'm broke, like myself, let's say, I have no ability to spend large sums of money to propagate what I got to say. But every time I hear people saying, oh, it's terrible because, whether, I don't care, Stephen Crowder or anybody else out there, I don't even know anything about the Stephen Crowder thing, but if somebody's getting money from some billionaire and it's because they say, oh, but they're a libertarian and they shouldn't be able to take that money. Well, okay, why are you causing? My problem is, I get it, but if we're going to have some kind of morals or ethics or principles, then can we fucking hold everyone to account? Because if you're not holding everyone else to account, why in the hell do we want to keep tying everyone's feet and hands behind their back that stand up for liberty? So as much as, like I say, I will never take Coke money myself. Right? Because I think I can do what I have to do. I've always been one of those people that I'll just do my own thing. I'm very independent that way. I don't need someone else to prop me up. I'll do my thing. But even if I did, let's say the clerks reached out to me and said, hey, Bennett, we'll throw you some money so that you can, put your information out there in a much more conducive manner and spread it further. Well, what the fuck? Why is that such a terrible thing? If they're doing it, if everyone else is doing it, and the collectivists and the people that want to economically and socially enslave me are doing it, well, why the hell do you constantly think that it's important to restrain myself or everyone like myself or like Crowder or anyone else? Why do you try to keep forcing these people that have to kind of succumb to or like I say, I don't know, stand in one of those fucking potato sacks and try to run a marathon against a sprinter or something? No, but like you can't constantly keep hampering and hindering the people that are standing up for liberty and giving the people that are basically using collectivism or top-down authoritarianism or big government and cronyism as a means to an end, because you're not going to help matters. Now, I agree. I wish we were all doing things on the up and up and not using, money as a means to an end as far as putting forth particular ideologies or preferences or opinions or stances. But I don't have a hatred on for people that are maybe seeking to expand upon their ability to spread their voice in manner to compete with their counterparts. Because like I said, if you're going to compete with corrupt people, you're not going to do it by, like I said, tying your feet and your hands behind your back. I don't want people to become corrupt. I don't like racing to that lowest common denominator or that race to the bottom, and I won't participate in myself. But I don't have a hate on for people that are looking out there on the landscape and looking to maybe get some money to back them so that they can spread their message a little further. I just still will hold them to account, and to me, it's all about their ideas they present. I don't give a shit where the money is. I don't care who's backing you per se. I care about what you're saying, what you present, and if you're being honest, forthright.
Yeah, well, we just take everyone has their own approach to things, okay? Right now, we are in a war. And it's a modern form of war, okay? Before we went to war, you grabbed a knife, some swords and shields, and some arrows. You met your opponent out on the battlefield, and you guys went down. Whoever had the last soldier standing was the victor. That was the warring time for the longest time. But now we've gotten smart, and now it's informational war. And, being any kind of good general, if I try to see myself as a military practitioner, I'm not going to rule off all the different strategies. If you go into a war and you play I'm moral and I'm not going to rule anything out, but like my father said, you got a team who's playing not by any moral rules, you're at a disadvantage. And I understand that. And maybe you'll die on your blade and you can say, well, I was there with my moral principles, but I take the mindset of I'm living that day on the end of the battlefield. I want to be one of the soldiers that's standing. And because of that, we have to skate this line when it comes to politics and being a libertarian, all that. A lot of libertarians or people on the far spectrum of the right bash at people like us because they see us as cucking out to the movement. And now we're getting into politics, and how dare you? To me, it's just another strategy. To me, it's just another form that I can defeat my enemies. And I understand that, they're using all these tactics. They're on Facebook. They're censoring this. I'm going to use every tool and tactic like they're using to get even. Now, Trump did a speech last night at C-SPAN, and one thing he said to the audience that was very, very good, and I think it was a good thing to get a point across, was the tariff debate too, because major concerns with the libertarian divide is obviously borders, tariffs, and the fact that we're even supporting any kind of political organization. Now, like me and my father have had in the debates before, and he's had on his other Canadian Libertarian channel, the Open Borders debates. It's not that at a fundamental level we understand that, you know, people should be able to come to and from country if they're free individual human beings. They should be able to do that. But you can't do that under the structure that we have today, where we have a state and you have a welfare system. So we can't. It's just a different strategy that we're taking, saying, okay, well, we need to build the borders right now because we're not to the point of where these people are ready to live underneath the total free market society. So we got to start moving them to that direction and not shoot ourselves in the foot by just letting status from across the border. Now, what I'm getting last night about Trump and his speech, he's saying a lot of people are getting mad at Trump about tariffs. You know, as a libertarian, I'm not a big fan of tariffs either. But if you got China who's shipping in their cars into Canada or United States and we're charging them nothing to do so, but then if we ship our products over to China, they put a 100% tariff on, we're at a lose disadvantage here. It's not a fair game. So as long as we're playing these 4D chess and we're doing this informational war, me and my father have taken an approach that we're on the battlefield and we're there to win. We're not taking any strategies off the board. That's what Trump always says. Like, when I'm in there to make a deal, I'm ready to do whatever. You know, even when he talks about war, he's like, I'm even to the point, if it goes to war, I'm willing to push the nuke buttons, because he's willing to take every approach to things. And that's how a good general thinks. And, you know, like he said about the tariffs. So he tariffs China, China tariffs America. And he said in his speech, it gets to a point where China realizes that, hey, why don't we just not tariff each other? Because both of us are losing money now. If we just lower it to zero, we can just let the free market. And that's what we're trying to do here. Same with the open borders. Is the same debate with the tariffs thing. We want to build the borders to slow the status from coming in. Once we get more and more libertarian minds woken up and less status, and we can control that influence of the population coming in like that and control it, then we can start opening and changing the minds. And, you know, it's just a different strategic approach. So people like Larkin Rose, people in the libertarian debate that are always infighting with each other, people are always attacking me and my father about, I thought you guys were anarcho-capitalists. I thought you guys were about the free market. How now are you for Trump and tariffs and borders? And we're just good generals willing to take any kind of measure on the battlefield because we're there to win. So if you're not willing to do that and you want to play your moral high ground, hey, I'll even maybe like a samurai warrior. If your honor's your total thing, you know what? I may look at you and salute you. Wow, you're an honorable man. But you may die on your sword being honorable. I will not. I want my family to continue. I want the concept of liberty and freedom to continue. So I will do whatever strategy is effective. And sometimes if that means playing in the political spiel, I will do that. But we will always adhere. Me and my father will always say tariffs and build the wall and all this stuff. But at a fundamental level, we always, same with Stefan Molyneux, come back to, hey, these are just strategies. We still understand the state's immoral. So don't beat us up for that. Once we get to that point, then we'll cross the next thing, which is living under a full free market, not having any state rulership. But we're not there yet. So let's just take different strategies. That's all it is.
Yeah. And being someone that my whole life has been the kind of person walks softly, just like my dad, walks softly and carry a big stick, is I don't look to fuck with anybody. Like I say, I'm a live, let live kind of guy. I'm a libertarian right down to my core. But like Matt is alluding to, if you fuck with me, and everyone that's ever done so in my past, just reach out to them. You know who I am. My name's out there. Go ahead and talk to anyone that's ever fucked with me in the past or that's ever known me. Yeah, Bennett's a really awesome dude, man. Probably the best fucking guy you'll ever meet, and doesn't go out to fuck with anybody. But if you mess with me, oh yeah, go ahead. Just like like I say, just like if I want to compete with you going down the track or in an intellectual endeavor, oh, I'm going to rise to the fucking occasion. And I'm never going to what do you think? I'm going to give you some kind of fucking freebie that you're going to be able to railroad your shit over me? This is the problem with people playing identity politics or playing this kind of divisive politics or playing authoritarianism with people like myself is, yeah, you can get away with it now. But I guarantee the people that have done so and they've watched me over the last few years realize, yeah, the little bit that you might have gained, you've lost it all. And you're fucking on the failing edge of what's happening, the reciprocal effect, because you awoken the inner beast in me. That's all you did. So, like I say, I would, if you were smart, if Trudeau and all these dipshits or anyone that wants to be your political leader these days, if they would stick in their fucking lane and stick to what the hell government's supposed to be, even though I'm not a fan of government, I don't need like somebody taking care of me. I'll deal with that myself. And because I have the ability to surround myself with some good people, I like to say I don't need government, but I recognize some people feel they need a government. But what it is when I recognize government's going to fuck with me, Yeah, you better believe that I'm going to do whatever I can to protect myself. That is the natural human incentive that you'll never destroy from, well, especially from people like myself. So the more they escalate this constant division, well, they'll realize at some point in time that you're not going to win. First of all, they can't win in the intellectual ground because they've already beat your asses severely as far as principles, morals, and ethics. And which is why it's like fucking lonely. I feel like the Maytag man at times when I put out my challenge. I've had on my Facebook page now for what, probably fucking going on the better part of a year, is I challenge anybody in the established media, alternative media, the politicians, academia. I challenge every human being out there. Come on my channel. I'll give you a freebie. You can try to shoot down everything I stand for. Go ahead. Matter of fact, I'll even admit I don't have no formal education or background, but let's see you do it. Not one of them will step up the plate. Just like in my social or sphere when I'm out there in public. I'll challenge you whether it's physical or in a social experience or in the intellectual world. Very few people want to actually fully challenge me. And why that is because that means you have to go toe to toe. And most people recognize at the very least that I'm not one of those guys that's going to yield or abide to whatever you say just because you want to put forth the narrative that you're better than me. You have to actually prove that with real world experience, which is why I always challenge everyone. You got to come on here. You got to look me in the eye and you got to challenge me. And you know what? I've never had anyone be able to do that. Why that is because I've understood for a long time. If you have courage, conviction, if you have a good moral stance, you're principled, and you're willing to stand for the things that you believe in, you have more power than you could ever hope to or even truly grasp or understand. So what I try to do is inspire my fellow Canadians or anyone else that pays attention to the video is I'm just like I say, it's not like I'm some exceptional guy. I'm just a regular dude like the rest of you. But because I'm unwilling to yield or conform to these kind of political edicts or demands from these central planners, they're scared the fucking death of me. But I don't want me to be the one that they're scared of me. I want you to join me. I want every one of you to join and show them that you think about what these central planners would feel like that if everybody were like me and pushed back against them saying, sorry, you have no power. You have no authority over me. If everyone stood like me, not just me, but Matt and a lot of the people that are standing up for liberty, individual liberty and freedom. If we all did that and showed a little solidarity with each other and stopped fighting with each other, these central planners, man, it wouldn't take very long that they'd have their tails tucked between their legs because they realize they're inferior on so many levels. The only thing that they have at their disposal that gives them this pretense of authority over you is the fact that they have the means of government, right? The big gigantic gun in the room. But once again, my gun is right here. I don't have I'm not actually sitting there pointing a gun at them, but I use my brain. My brain is a very powerful force. And Matt's brain, your brain, every one of you brain. If you inform yourself properly, if you educate yourself properly, then your ability to put forth information and discern and differentiate the difference between truth, fiction, and lies and illogical bullshits or concepts, you have no idea how much power you actually have in your possession. And I want you out there as a Canadian citizen or anyone else that pays attention to this video to understand just how much power you truly have if you show your willingness and audacity. And I'm seeing out there today, a lot of Canadians are stepping up the plate. And I guarantee if you asked each and every one of them, they probably felt the same way I did at the very first when they were starting to do this. Is like, oh, I don't want to put myself out there public. I'm scared that somebody might, but you know what? Put yourself out there, grow your skin, make it a little bit thicker and say, listen, I'm willing to take whatever you got to throw at me. Because once again, at the end of the day, especially when you're talking about, conversating or dialogue or debates, it's just word, folks. So be willing, have the audacity to stand for freedom. And you'll see that these people that want to be your so-called thought leaders or opinion makers, they'll slither off like the snakes that they are the minute you show that they have no power or capacity to do so. But if you're unwilling to stand up them, just like a proverbial bully or a real life bully, if you don't show your willingness or your capacity to stand up against them, well, they're always going to constantly try to impose their will on you.
Yeah, and I would just say, like, we have truth and reason behind our principles, and why we will come out victor is because what we're calling for is we're fighting to leave you alone. Why is that a bad thing? Our fundamental principle boils down to fundamentally fighting to leave you alone. If, in our type, if we were all based off voluntary interactions in the true free market, people who were even hardcore socialists, go ahead, do your socialist experiment. Do it next door. But you know what? The minute you encroach into my life and you're making me adhere to your socialist principles, that's when we have an issue. Because do I think that some small little hippie town can't be a total socialist and just help each other? They might be able to make it work, but not all people want to do that, or not all people should. So I want like 7, like my father says too. We want 7 billion states. We want all these different experiments, and the best one will win. You know, if you had California going full socialist and Texas going full libertarian and cap, let's see which of the states wins. Let's see which one has more freedom and prosperity. You know, that's the true experiment. But the government's so scared to give that up because they know what will happen. People will be like, well, I'm going to Texas. They got everything down there. They're flying cars down there, and we're eating dogs up here in California. You know, that's what it boils down to. And it's all about the divide and conquer tactic. You know, we had the whole racial debate in the 60s and stuff, you know, Martin Luther King, you know, black rights and all that kind of stuff. And then from that period till right up till recently, till the whole social justice warrior Black Lives Matter happened, what, during that entire frame where everyone was quiet, there was no issue? No, it's just that the media chose to pick up on it at the right time. You know, we were moving, we were progressing. Libertarians were just fighting out the principles 10 years ago, and we were starting to gain traction, and people were starting to understand these concepts. So the ruling class is like, what do we do? People are starting to wake up to these ideas. They go, oh, let's use the oldest tactic in the book, divide and conquer. And how do they divide and conquer? They don't just do it by one thing. They do it by 40 chess. Let's divide them by race and IQ. Let's get the whites fighting the blacks. Let's get the blacks and the Hispanics fighting and the whites. That. And then they're like, well, let's not stop there. We got feminism all of a sudden takes another radical spin in the 20th century. Now it's coming back in these last couple of years. Oh, big feminism issues. We had feminism issues in the 60s. And like I said, there was a quiet time where it wasn't really discussed anymore. So be very wary of why all of a sudden, why now are these things such a big deal? Why now is the gay issue such a big deal? The transsexual issue such a big deal? The white male issue? The male versus female issue. Why now is this such a big conversation? And, you know, the social justice warriors will play this, oh, well, we're so worried about it now. No, these issues have been going on throughout history. You're only making a fuss now because your ruling class is saying, talk about these things. Because if you're talking about race and IQ and differences between men and women and what's if he's got a penis or not, if he's a man or a woman, you're not talking about whether the state's immoral. And you got to get back to the main thing. It's all just distraction. SNC, distraction. Russiagate, distraction. Everything you see in the media today, distraction. So me and my father will cover these issues during our podcast throughout however long we do this podcast. But we're always going to point out the fact that we're covering the story today, but just so you know, it's complete bullshit. It's complete distraction. It's propaganda. It's what the elite are feeding us, and they want us to cover this because it's a distraction mechanism from the real issues. So I just want to constantly, and we probably will, every podcast, try to pound that into the viewer's head and realize that we'll talk about these things, but just realize where it's coming from. It's not a good place.
Yeah. Well, the way I think about it, live by the sword, die by the sword. And Trudeau chose, just like a lot of those out there that went to go the identity politics route, they recognize that it's a political strategy, I guess. Well, if you got nothing to stand for, right? And that's really what the Trudeau liberals, I mean, think about it. What do they stand for? Nothing. They have nothing. So all they got is identity politics. You know, what do you hear? Go ahead. And if you disagree with me, comment in this video and show me. Give me a quote of something that Trudeau said that actually gave you some fundamental understanding of what he truly stood for, or what he stands for. What his principles? What are his ethics? You know, what's his morality? No, all I get is identity politics. Is the division of, you know, the divide and conquer routine, right? But we already learned, like I said, live by the sword, die by the sword. And Trudeau has proven this in this SNC Lavalin scandal with Jody Wilson-Raybould, a woman and a First Nations lady. He thought it was so smart to play that. He thought he was going to get all these women and all these First Nation people that he could put under his fold, that he could carry favor for, because he like I say, he virtue signaled. He played that identity politics card. Rather than being principled and saying, I stand for just this particular value or principle, he played the race and the sex and the historical, like the cultural differences. He played, like I say, the identity politics game, and now it's coming back to haunt him and bite him in the ass. Because look who's out there today. It's mostly women and people from the First Nations community that are pushing back against Trudeau. And why? Well, the fact that he threw a woman First Nations justice minister, right, under the bus. Well, like I say, this is the problem. This is that to me is the most amazing thing that I love, because we're going to see this unfold, folks. This is only just this is only the beginning. You're going to see how this will unfold to the point, which is what collectivism, which is what identity politics has always shown through history, is you watch how the left will eat all their own. And what, at the end of the day, just like that expression of, well, first they came for the communists, but I wasn't a communist, so I looked the other way, right? First they came for this. Well, eventually that identity politics, that placing everyone into these little structural boxes, right? Eventually, like, they're going to come for you, because that cross intersectionality, when you're talking about identity politics, means that it's that race to the bottom. And like I say, you know, once you get down there, you realize that, oh, you're surrounded by the worst people you'll ever meet. And nobody wants to be down there at the bottom. So identity politics doesn't play out even good in the political stage, but it's definitely not playing out for the social development that's unfolding as a reflection of this SNC leveling scandal. Because now you're having a lot of women out there that would have been the ones that I even heard these ones out there when people interview them. Oh, but he's got nice hair. But once they've heard that, oh, fuck, he threw a woman under the bus and basically said that she experienced it differently. That's the thing. It's Canadians have it at their forefront of their mind about the Groper Gate, right? And they know that Trudeau was virtually saying about being a feminist. So the fact that he's basically telling Jody Wilson-Raybould, the woman that said, like, she was very meticulous, right? And but he's saying, well, I don't agree with how she experienced it. Well, think about what that's going to do to a whole lot of women out there. Now they're going to turn against Justin Trudeau for the sheer fact that he proved to them even. Like, I didn't have to say a thing. Trudeau himself, as much as I wish I could bring down Trudeau by just giving some good, honest rhetoric and stances or positions that prove how much of an immoral person he is, that didn't do anything compared to Trudeau sticking his own fucking proverbial foot in his mouth with those stupid ass socks he likes to wear, right? I hope he fucking chokes on them. But I mean, he proved that literally playing identity politics, it's going to be that final nail in his coffin. Well, I hope if he gets elected in October of 2019, that will be the final nail in the coffin for me. I already suspect there's a large enough percentage of the population that relies on big government for their paycheck. That's, once again, the incentive structure, because we have 4.1 million Canadians that rely on government for their occupation. I realize the incentive is already there, that they'll probably put their blinders on and support this guy just so that they can keep themselves going along in their jobs or their positions. But I think at some point in time, like I say, I think you're starting to see that crack, that kind of fission or that separation starting to actually play out in real life. And I think Trudeau's going to find that the people that he catered to, or that he put like, that identity politics, hey, you're part of my group, you're part of my tribe. Now I think he's seeing that a lot of the people that he wanted to claim as part of his tribe are now turned against him because, well, he's thrown them under the proverbial bus as well, and shown that he's neither a feminist or a big advocate or proponent of the First Nation people, because he's basically used the fact that she's a woman and that she's experienced it differently, right? So using that identity politics as a means for his own political rhetoric. So I think he's already destroyed his own credibility for even the people that he tried to cater to in the first place.
Yeah, Trudeau for sure isn't a feminist. It's all just positioning him for the status quo to make it appeal like he's a social justice warrior. He doesn't believe in any of that shit. And it's all just, like I said, a strategy that the deep staters are using against us. Because, like I said, if I was a general, and I'm going to play opposition right now, okay, and I want to take down America, I want to take down Western civilization, I want to rule these people, I want to, be more authoritarian with them. Well, who is going to be my number one enemy? Now, in a country that's still a majority white people, we could safely say that if something happens and people need to take up arms, it's going to be probably a majority of the population, which would be white people. And then who in most cases would be the first people of the white race to take up arms, take a line in the sand, and actually physically resist their government? Well, it tends to be in most cases men, biologically. So who, if I was the deep state and I'm going to take down the West, my number one enemy that would be the most likely resistance for me to take up arms and give me any kind of fight and resistance for the takeover would be white men. So that's why right now that is the main focus of everything in the media right now, whether it's the gay issue or the trans issue or every bit of them all tie into white men, white men, white men's the problem. White men are the reasons why we're holding women back, because we're not letting them in the workplace. White men's the problem. White men's the problem for ruling over the governments and keeping black people down. White men's everything they're using is just a strategy to demonize the number one group, who would be the resistance. And once you see through that, like I can, it's so easy to understand why they're using the strategy. It's very simple, because I would use that strategy if I was an evil bastard who thought like them. You know, if I'm going to go invade China, let me see, who is going to be my number one threat in China? Well, China's predominantly Asian people. Like I said, men are predominantly going to be the ones who take up arms over women. So let's put on a campaign of demonizing Asian men to take down the country, to demoralize the men, so that they're least willing to go out and resist. You know, this is why we see the feminization of boys is a big issue. See, I got nothing ill will against gay people. What people do in the confines of their bedroom, I don't give a shit. But the whole reason gay people should realize that we're being used right now as a tool to divide men, to demasculinize men, because they don't want strong alpha men, because strong alpha men is what fights tyranny when it's at your doorstep. So they're being used. The black people are being used. And they need to realize that the left is literally saying, oh, we're here to protect you. We're here to protect you. They're using all of you guys, your tools, for their end game. So once you see through that, it's very easy to understand where all this comes from. And that's why at a vast majority level, people, that's why they got behind Trump. That's why there's more people like Stefan Molyneux and people like me and my father, people who considered themselves libertarian, or people who are against the state before, getting in behind Trump, and why there's less people like Larkin Rose who are taking that hard stance, because at a fundamental level, we understand, oh, this is what's going on. This is what we need to do. Okay, we need to get involved here. Things are a lot more complicated than just taking these principled conversations anymore. We're actually in a war that actually has consequences, and and consequences that can lead to us not being able to achieve the state that we're going to do. So we need to point these out and resist them at every kind of point that they try to fight us at.
Yeah. Actually, I just wanted to cover a couple other points, and then after I cover these points, because I want to also cover the fact that it's not just the Trudeau Liberals that are corrupt as far as picking winners or losers of the economy, or economically enslaving generations. Well, not just people alive today, but future and successive generations. But a few other things is, they're even talking about using the RCMP to investigate Trudeau, because, well, I mean, already now they're basically using federal Liberals, like their own ethics commissioner, to investigate. Hey, we investigated ourselves and we found we did nothing wrong. So that's not going to work when the federal government's investigating itself. Good luck on getting a whole lot out of that. But in addition to that, we've heard people say that, well, we should get the RCMP involved in this investigation. Well, hello, we've already heard how corrupt the RCMP is. I mean, once again, if you pay attention to politics or the news and the media that's presented to us on a daily and continuing ongoing basis, you at least know that the RCMP, that's a very, very, very corrupt organization all on its own. So, and because these are fallible human beings and they work for the government, once again, it always comes down to incentive. People that work for the government, whether it's a crown prosecutor, a mindless order follower, like a cop or a teacher, most of these people, they probably have differences as far as their opinions in their personal life, as far as some of the policies that happens, in regards to whether it's a conservative or a liberal or an end dipper in charge politically. But at the end of the day, they're always going to make sure whatever their decision they make is to protect their own jobs, their own livelihood. And if they work for the government, they're not going to try to bring down or topple down big government. That's just a reality fact of the facts, folks. So to look for people that are part and parcel of government or any subsidiary or branch of government to hold government to account, I just don't know how well that'll work out. And the only way now, because I am a libertarian, I'll recognize that if there is a particular individual, it doesn't mean that it's not possible, because there might be an individual that has some really staunch libertarian principles, although I don't see that today, because they wouldn't be very conducive in the political structure today. But if there was such thing as one of those people, then I'd be like, okay, allow this person to investigate. But once again, the RCMP doesn't have, I've never heard any libertarian-ish, right, or liberty-loving principles or fundamentals espoused by the bigwigs in the RCMP. So I don't think even having an RCMP as an investigation is going to be a whole lot helpful as far as holding the federal Liberals to account. What was the other thing? Another thing I want to point out too is this is the fifth, folks, fifth ethics probe. Since Trudeau come to power in 2015, this has been the 5th ethics probe that has been put forth and presented by the federal Liberals. You know, there was the AgaCon, you know, the big vacation thing. There's like all kinds of examples. I looked it up earlier. I'll post a link to an article that gives all that detail too, as well, in the description of this video. But this is the 5th. So ethics and principles and doing things on the up and up seems to be something that the Trudeau Liberals have a serious problem with. But once again, last one. Oh yeah, and in addition to that too, so this is the other problem. So we all agree that the China government and this was it Meng Wanzhou from the Huawei, this executive, this is CFO that's been arrested. Now China's now pushing back, saying, hey, apparently you fuckers aren't really caring too much about ethics. So why are you telling this? Why are you arresting this Huawei executive and giving her the carte blanche, or giving her or handing over her to the U.S. government, when apparently bribery and corruption is very much something that happens in Canada? So once again, now we don't even have the credibility, or I'm not like but the Trudeau Liberals don't even have a credibility on the global stage anymore in regards to this whole China thing and the amount of corruption that happens in that country, and the top-down dictatorship and authoritarianism happen there, and the fact that this company may very well use the infrastructure in Canada as a means to impose their own spy apparatus throughout the Five Eyes and keep a big eye on what happens in this country. So now Trudeau is basically thrown not just the domestic population on the bus, but now even on the international or global scale has given Canada no pretense of legitimacy as trying to hold some of these actors to account. But in addition to that, like I say, we'll move on. I'll let Matt respond to whatever he has to say. And then after that, we want to get into, because like I say, the Liberals, they're just the newest party, folks. But corruption has been rampant in this country for a while. And actually I had Derek Rance Derek, actually, I was talking to him yesterday, and he was even unfamiliar. It's like, this is surprising to me. And I showed him that all you have to do is just type in, if you want to do it yourself, if you're paying attention to this video, just type into Google, 114 billion, then just type in after that, bank bailout. And if you do that, if you're Canadian, because you'll be using google.ca, you'll get a few articles that'll come up in regards and explains the stuff that, and I pointed out in many past videos, because there's only a few thousand people that have ever watched my videos in this country. A lot of Canadians are still ignorant to the fact that it was the Harper regime that bailed out not just the auto sector, but all the banksters, the big banksters. And the banksters have a huge amount of power. These are the people, like I say, not only the central bank and the banksters, they're the ones that affect all of your economic prosperity and have the ability to completely micromanage and manipulate your economic prosperity. So economics, like I said earlier on in this video, that's a reflection of your value, of your labor, of your productivity. So when banksters have the ability to steal or plunder from not just your income to pay for or to prop up these failing corrupt organizations, but to plunder the future productivity of your children or grandchildren, this is something that's devastating and detrimental. This is just as bad, if not worse, than the corruption of the federal Liberals. Although to me, I don't try to play this of, who is more. Corruption is so rampant in this country, I want all of them to cease to exist, to have any pretense of authority over us. But definitely corruption has happened, not just under the Liberal regime, but the Harbors before them.
Yeah, well, like I said, we were supposed to talk about SNC, and I'm reading through some of my notes for it now, but it's just so outlandish or absurd to even get into reading this stuff, because it's so it's just common sense. She says, I asked, are you politically interfering with my role to make a decision as Attorney General? I would strongly advise against it. Trudeau says, no, we just need to find a solution. He's not interfering, but we need to find a solution. I mean, it's just, I don't even want to talk about this shit because it's a non-issue. Of course Trudeau is lobbying for this stuff in there. So I don't know. Maybe, I don't know if we've beaten the SNC.
Let me add one more for you, since you brought that one up, because the one that I was actually going to reference earlier, but I had to go on because I was referencing the wrong one, was Jerry Butts said, Jess, there is no solution here that doesn't involve some interference. That's, to me, that's like, if I was the Crown prosecutor in this case, if you can present this testimony in an actual criminal case, which it better be. Like I say, if a criminal case doesn't happen as a result of this, then just recognize, Canada, there is no such thing as freedom anymore. You don't live in anything that you even a pretense of a democracy, or you live under a complete dictatorship, like a fascist state is what is, because if nothing comes out of it. But I mean, that alone, there is no solution here that doesn't involve some interference. That is That's an admission of guilt. I mean, that's like a guy, that robbed some dude and said, hey, there's no way I could have got that VCR television if I didn't break into his house. Well, isn't that a fucking, that to me is like, well, case closed. Let's wrap this up, folks. Let's head home. As a matter of fact, we can probably still make lunch. Come on. That is a blatant admission of guilt just on that testimony alone. And I believe that, like I say, Raybould, she was very meticulous in taking notes. So I do believe she wouldn't put that out there unless she fully believed that that's exactly what was said. And it's not just her truth. That's the other thing too. Why do we keep hearing the story about her truth or his truth? Or there's fucking truth or there's not truth, right? Why is there such thing as his or her truth? No, it's either true. Like 2 + 2 is 4. It's not his truth. No, that's just fucking truth.
Well, it'll be interesting to see, like you said, how the media and spins this and what happens in court. Because I'll tell you one thing. If Trudeau doesn't get any kind of charges, if nothing ever happens out of this scandal, and like you said, he's already had about 5 or so incidents with his ethics commissioner, and nothing's ever happened to the guy. And it'll show you the clear divide and why I'm actually a Trump supporter. Because CBC and Canadian news, they're no fan of Trump, and they're all on the Russian collusion delusion. That's what Trump calls it now, Russian collusion delusion. He's always good at his knickknacks and names. I love it. That's what I like about him.
Low energy jab.
Yeah, low energy jab. So it'll show like the clear divide. It's like you have the FBI, even if it's come out now, and Mueller's almost ready to wrap up, or if he is pretty wrapped up now, he's already said there's no Russian collusion. So what's the next thing they're moving on to? They want to dive into all Trump's financial records. So here you got our Canadian Prime Minister caught, like you said, there's a statement. There's got to be obstruction. We got to get involved. We got to find a solution for this. Gets off scot-free. The media loves him in Canada. You got Trump, who here, they're literally looking under every rock and crevice to find what can we get on this guy? Oh, hookers in Moscow pissed on him. Nope, fake news. Russian collusion. Oh wait, there's actually no Russian collusion. And well, let's get all of his little minions below him, Roger Stone and all these other little people, Cohen. Let's get all of his little people, and all these charges are little policy things, or they lied to us. Nothing actually of the charges relate to Russia collusion. So you can see, this is why I like Trump. If all of my enemies hate this guy, that sends me up like, whoa, maybe I got to look into this guy. Everyone I hate hates his guts. So maybe he's not that bad. So like people who say, oh, Trump is deep state, Trump is controlled opposition. I've never seen, since I've been born, and my father's even older since he's been born, anyone who's been tackled the way that Trump has in the media. They come at him like crazy. Like I said, no Russian collusion, but they're pounding it through the media. Trudeau can blatantly obstruct justice. Oh, well, he's just looking for Canadian jobs. Come on, people. How obvious does it got to be?
Yeah. Well, my biggest thing, I just want to actually, this is something I don't think I've stressed enough in any past videos. And I was talking about it when I was talking to Rance Derek there yesterday, is I'm of the mentality, listen, let's just clear the air here, folks. For all these people that want to be your political authority, just admit the fact, if they would just be honest for once and just admit the fact that, no, it's all political decree. You basically function under an authoritarian regime, and it's fight or flight. It's the fittest of the strongest, right? And if we're going to function under that environment where there's no rules anymore, which is basically what they're saying, like when you're talking, like I say, whether you go back to the Harper regime and all the corruption that they did, or whether you're talking about the liberals, or you can go back, like I say, lots of historical precedent that shows that these central planners, they're all corrupt in nature and basically want to use might makes right, which is the government in the gun in the room. I'm totally with the might make right. As a matter of fact, we can degrade, if you want to degenerate back into just pure nature, where it's just, the strong, the fittest of the strongest survive, and it's the survival of the fittest, right? I can function in any environment. But I was always under this presumption that we're supposed to live under this pretense that the West and these modern Western democracies, we do everything on the up and up, and we're supposed to be moral and ethical and principled and have all these understandings, what's good and what's right, what's just, what's unjust. Well, that's how I try to function in my life, because that's basically what's been jammed in my fucking head for my whole life. That's the way I've tried to function. What I'm learning today is, well, wait a minute. If I constantly keep functioning under this fucking false pretense of I got to keep restricting myself every day to these narrow confines of morality and ethics, while everyone else around me keeps screwing me over time and time again because I'm holding myself basically. Actually, they're not even tying my hands and feet behind my back. I'm doing it myself. I'm getting to the point where I'm tired of fucking tying my feet and hands behind my back while everyone else runs rickshot over top of me. So this is once again, this is the degradation. If you're unwilling to hold your political actors to account, the people that are your thought leaders, your opinion makers, or your political rulers, if you're unwilling to do them, okay, whatever. That's your fucking choice. That is your choice to make. You can be complacent, you can be compliant, you can be a conformist as much as you want. But then you better start to recognize, then they better stop, then at least tell them to get their fucking boot off my fucking neck, because I'm not going to fucking play by any rules that keeps me, once again, way down here while they have the ability to stick their fucking foot. I've got a pretty good big foot, and I've got a pretty good fucking size pair of boots that I can fucking put on their fucking neck just as well. The difference is I'm tired of them having the capacity, or the Canadian people saying that they have some legitimate authority to keep putting their boot on my neck, but saying that, oh, no, Ben, you're not allowed to stand up and have the ability to put your boot on their neck. No. If we're going to play this game, right, where people, it's just whoever has the most power, whoever can gain access to the gun. If we're going to play into that fucking realm, if we're going to completely obscure and deny morality or ethics or principles, whatever, like I say, I can function under any environment. Morality, I prefer morality. I prefer to function like if I'm sitting down to play a board game or a card game or something, I prefer that we're all functioning under the same rules and holding each other to account. But if we're playing under where everybody can just make up the rules where they get along, well, trust me. Just admit and acknowledge that fact, and you'll see that I can make up the rules that I'll kick every one of these fuckers' ass. Proverbially, not physically, right? I'm not advocating for violence, folks. I don't do that. I'm a libertarian. But like I say, in the intellectual sphere or the ability to have what I got to say that sounds more conducive to people, yeah, like I say, we can play the political game or the social engineering or all this economic malfeasance. You want to play that game? Well, like I say, I could dominate all of these people. The difference is I try to hold myself to a moral stance. I don't try to manipulate people socially, economically, or politically. But I'm not going to, it's not going to be a whole lot longer than I'm going to constantly keep restraining myself and allowing not just myself, but the people that are trying to do the right thing to be constantly have to be subordinates to these unethical, unprincipled, immoral pieces of shit that keep trying to impose their will on them. At some point in time, I'm going to fucking shut my mouth. And when you start hearing all these people that say some really terrible things, instead of saying that, no, you should be right, you should be principled, instead of me preaching them to hold themselves to a higher standard, I'm going to say, well, listen, I'm not going to preach you to hold yourself to a higher standard anymore because I realize that you're just raising down to compete with these dipshits. And you know what? Let all you fucking dumbasses fight amongst each other. And you know what? That's when the point comes. Like I say, if you don't want libertarians to be the referees and speak and reason and be principled in our stance, whatever, then all you'll do is degenerate us down to the fact where, yeah, it's just might makes right. And once you start that situation, well, we'll put it this way, especially if you're a lefty, if you're one of those people that identify on that far left, especially on the political spectrum, or should I say far left over here on the spectrum, you're one of those ones that you're going to fucking lose in those battles every time, intellectually and physically for the most part. There are some caveats, there's some exceptions, but for the most part, all you lefties, you will lose out to those right-wingers physically, intellectually, and economically. So I'm trying to help, actually, you lefties, I'm trying to defend you even by saying to start doing the right fucking thing. Otherwise, the right-wingers are going to run rickshot over you. Because once you play that identity politics game, or you try to play intervening into the economic or social prosperity of people that, like I say, usually very strong, independent, resilient themselves, or have their own form of collectivism, yeah, trust me, you're not going to want to participate in that race much longer. Matter of fact, there's going to come a point in time if you don't start holding each other or your own peeps to account, then you'll be fucking at some point in time, you'll be begging libertarians, please help us, please. And then I'll be like, oh, sorry. Hey, I tried to fucking tell you dipshits for like the last decade. You didn't want to listen? Well, now I guess you're going to have to suffer the consequences for not wanting to listen to what I had to say.
Well, yeah, and most people are ignorant of history and don't realize that the American Revolution, which is one of the beautifulest revolutions throughout history that led to the prosperity that America is today, that was not by popular opinion, okay? Only about 5 or so, maybe a little bit more percentage of the population thought that they were going to overthrow the British government. So it was not, there's a bunch of sheeple around who thought, no, let's continue to be slaves under British rule. It was a small minority that actually went and did what they did and took the consequences, and then now 100 years later, we thank them for it. Now, see what we're doing today, we might be the enemy, but in 100 years later, all these libtards are going to thank us for it when they have the insight from the perspective of in the future to look back at what we did. And don't take what I'm about to say as a threat. This is from Jordan Peterson, from lawyers, from judges, and everyone else has said this. But if conversation ceases to exist, if the left and right stifle the ability to have these ideas and communicate them, it's inevitable that violence is the next step. And that's not me making a threat to the state or anything like that at all. That's just what happens. That's just common sense. That's just history. And like you said, people on the left, I'm telling you, you don't want to get into a physical altercation with people on the right or the Trump supporters or the Maxim Bermians because, yeah, we're the gun owners. We're the ones out there being physically active, training, no gun ownership, know our rights. We know truth and know knowledge. And if it comes down into a physical altercation, it's not going to end well for you guys. I mean, and the media, shame on you guys for picking your sides. You know, if you punch a Trump supporter in the face, well, you just punched a racist, a Nazi. He deserved it. Antifa can go smashing up buildings, attacking Trump supporters, and it's seen as okay. But as soon as a Trumpy raises a fist, oh, he just punched a black guy, or he's a racist, or he did this and that. And I'm telling you right now, if you set that precedence, giving the left the ability, a scot-free approach, and same with the government, same with the police. If you're standing by at a protest and you're letting these lefties run amok, beating up people on the right, it's only going to go to a certain point. The right says, that's it, we're done. And the physical altercations begin in the streets, and it ain't going to go well. And these people, high up politicians and elitists and all these type of stuff, I don't understand what you guys think that this is just all going to end well. Okay, anytime civilizations devolve into civil wars and revolution and violence on the street, nobody's safe. Nothing's going well. I don't want that because even people on our end will get hurt and potentially die. We don't want it to divulge into violence, but the media is pushing us that way. The government's pushing us that way. They're getting behind these left-wing activists and these far left-wing extremists, and they're pushing them, and they're giving them the green light. Here you go. Do what you want. Be violent. Be violent against the righties. Let's suppress them. Let's deplatform them. Let's remove their speech. And at a certain point, it seems like they're pushing us to the inevitable. And maybe that's what they want. And if it is what they want, I don't know. I don't think that strategy is going to work out well for them. I give them the best of top my hat off to them. But if it comes down to that, it's not going to go well. And, you know, and I get so tired that when we talk about these ideas, we get labeled as extremists. Oh, my God, they're talking about political violence and collapse and revolutions. We're talking about because we don't want to go down that road. We're throwing up the white flag. Hey, guys, stop now, because where this leads is that, and we're trying to put a halt on it. So in 10, 15 years, if we're still doing this podcast and this pull out revolution in the streets of violence, just remember that the libertarians, people on the far right, were screaming peace and we're screaming to put a halt to this. And, you know, you may not remember it now watching this podcast, but we're not talking to all the viewers now. We're talking to the people years down the road that'll find these videos. We're talking to the generations down the road that'll look back and say, well, no, people on that perspective, they were actually trying to put a halt to this. It's the media, it's the politicians, it's these assholes that have given these left-wingers the green light to do all this political violence. They had it coming. And, you know, and it's sad to say that we're not, we as libertarians, and anyone I'm talking to out there that's viewing this, who has the fight that me and my father have, just know, we will not be rewarded for our fight and our good deeds. It's sad to say, till after we're dead. We'll be rewarded through the history books. But, you know, it's very rare do we get to be the ones that come in riding in on the white horse and bring in liberty, and we get to all be coddled and praised for all of our good deeds. Sadly, throughout history, that's not happened. It's not till years down the road we have the introspect to look back and say, wow, those were truly amazing people. Just like Trump right now is disrespected in the media. The speech he gave at C-SPAN last night was a George Washington type speech. You know, we will not ever be a socialist nation. You know, American people, we respect the Second Amendment. He also, I don't know, Dad hasn't had a chance to watch this yet. He's bringing in an executive order to compel all college campuses and universities. He's signing it soon, saying that, hey, you don't have free speech on the campus? No federal funding. God love the guy. Like, he's literally actually doing legislation and passing things that are making the country better. So say what you want about the guy. He's the first politician or president that's actually rolling back regulation, rolling back taxes, shrinking government, and getting some things done. That's unheard of throughout politics. Usually they just pander and never get anything accomplished.
Yeah, actually, it's funny because I actually did hear that this morning. Actually, I think I was reading the article. No, it was a Twitter post that someone, when I was going through my Twitter feed, that someone had posted that executive order. But it seems like he was doing that was a. I do have a little bit of regret for some of my promotion and praise of Doug Ford, although I'm very appreciative of the fact that the Kathleen Wynne Liberals and the McGeechees before them are all fucking relegated to the dustbins of history. Awesome. And I've definitely had a lot of disagreements in some of the things that Ford has done as a consequence since he became the Premier of Ontario. But one thing I definitely agree on, and I think it's like, actually, seems like Trump might be following a little bit of Dougie's lead there, but no, I'm sure he was willing to do so. We're already going to start doing that. There were some insiders that was probably already talking to him because of what's happening down there, especially down in California, in Southern California, on some of the university campus down there. I'm sure it was something that was already on Trump's mind. But this is one thing that I can definitely agree on as far as, like I said, I'm not a big advocate of the state or using like force or violence, which is what legislation is. But hey, if you're using the legislation, if your threat isn't to impose your will on people, but if your threat is to say you have to, that's kind of a terrible thing, right? I would never personally want to use a gun to threaten people. Like, you better start allowing each other to speak freely. It seems like a really weird thing that we should have to do in this modern day, that we should have to force people to allow freedom of expression, freedom of thought, and freedom of speech to exist. But I'm very appreciative. Hey, if you are going to use that big gigantic gun in the room, because that's the thing I recognize as a pragmatist, is I don't like anyone using the gun in the room to impose their will or mandates or edicts on others. But hey, when their mandates or edicts are in that negative sphere where it's like they're not actually forcing people to do anything, they're just forcing them to allow each and everyone to have the ability to speak freely, right? I'm kind of appreciative and on board with that. And so whether it's Doug Ford doing it in Ontario, as far as the campuses and as far as university and colleges in Ontario, or like I say, Donald Trump doing it in the United States, this is something, but it's a sad reality today. Actually, this is a sad reflection of the fact that you need an executive order or a premier of Ontario to create legislation to impose, think about it. You have to impose and force colleges and universities to allow freedom of speech or expression. That seems to me, that's so fucking, that actually is literally the whole point of having colleges and universities or post-secondary institutions, is to have freedom of thought and freedom of expression. That, that all those things that have taken us out of the fucking dark ages, that should be something that you don't have to force or impose onto people. But I guess that's the weird fucking, Orwellian world we live in today. Now you have to use force. Now you have to threaten people. Hey, you better allow each other to speak their mind or speak their opinion.
Yeah.
I don't like the fact that we have to force that as a means to an end, but I'm very much glad that at least we have the capacity to do so.
Yeah, isn't it saying that literally you got Trump riding in on a white horse, being like holding a gun at people? Respect your First Amendment, respect your Constitution. Like, he's literally got to, like you say, he's got to compel people to respect the Constitution. That's pretty radical shit, if you got to ask me. Like.
Yeah, seriously though. That is, like, if you think about it, you actually literally have
he's holding a gun to the guy's head to make sure that he's safe.
Yeah.
Don't
not
shoot yourself
from him.
Put that gun down. Don't shoot yourself.
Yeah, not to steal from him or not to make him align with your political rhetoric, but just say you should allow other people to say what they got to say. What a weird concept.
I know. I always liked too when they said that, oh, Russia was Putin's cock holster was one thing that one of those anchors said. It was pretty funny, or Bill Mayer or Bill Ayer or whatever might said it. And I always said to them, listen, if Russia's really controlling Trump and Russia's Trump is, hey, we respect the Second Amendment, we respect the First Amendment, we like our Western culture, then you know what? I'm a Russian supporter. Woohoo! Putin's the shit. If really Trump is backed by Putin, and what does Putin want to make America great again? God damn, Putin's a pretty good guy then. So I always love that narrative about how, oh, he's in the back pocket of Putin, but yet all of his talking points are pro-America. It doesn't make very much sense for Russia to be so pro-America.
Yeah, well, I even get a kick out of the media when you brought it up, when they talk about the Hillary Clinton email scandal. They always talk about how, the Russians got a hold, but they never want to point out the fact that who cares where the fuck it come from? Lucky it happens to be the Russians. I guess they're more competent these days as far as their hacking abilities. But who cares where the fuck the information came from as far as acknowledging and proving that, hey, the Clinton campaign, or they were all a bunch of corrupt motherfuckers. Like, to me, it's like, isn't the evidence enough? That the evidence where the source was or how it came to be, that is kind of secondary nature to the fact that, hello, Hillary Clinton had like, what was it, 30,000 emails of just pure blatant corruption. So to me, that's but that was the narrative that the media in the U.S. tried to put forth is, damn them damn Russians for, I guess, for what? Exposing the truth? Like, what the
Well, last night on Trump's C-SPAN speech, it's funny how you mentioned that, and you haven't watched the speech yet, and I have. So you're going to really enjoy the speech, because one of the things, Trump is a very comedical person, and he's up there and he's at C-SPAN, and his whole thing is, I'm going to regret this speech, because this speech, I'm not on the teleprompter. This is just Trump being raw, and that's where we love Trump. And he actually starts going like, oh, Russia, can you get us the Hillary's emails? Please find us them. And he's so funny. And then he kept going on too about, I loved how he's like, you know what? I'm a huge proponent of the Green Deal. And if this is my opposition who I'm running against in 2020, I love it. I hope that Ortiz is my opponent. And you know what? I back her. And I think she should promote that Green Deal and promote all these terrible ideologies, because go ahead, you're going to get your ass whooped running against Trump, promoting free everything for everyone. So if the left keeps divulging, good, great. You're just going to get a bigger voter base for Trump or people like Maxine in the upcoming elections. Keep going far down the rabbit hole to the left and just continuing to spiral down. It's only better for us, more people. And I said this in a previous podcast as well to my father and to all my viewers out there, is nobody is waking up an anarchist and who switches to a socialist, okay? It just doesn't happen, okay? Once you understand economics, you understand liberty and the principles behind it, you just don't reverse. But there are socialists every day converting over to people who are libertarian. You got Dave Rubin, you got Sargon of the Akkad, you got all these people who before, even Jimmy Dore, who's on the Young Turks, is now even like dividing up with Young Turks, being like, whoa, we're against free speech now? Like, so this is great. Like the divide, they're shrinking. Their left is getting smaller and smaller because they're radicalizing the branch of themselves. Even the abortion debate now. Whoa, will we kill babies after? That's fine. Keep promoting these things. You're bringing more people over to our team. The same with the government. That's fine. Keep taxing people. Police, that's fine. Go out and brutalize black people. Go out and brutalize regular citizens. You know what? Every time you put a person in jail for a nonviolent offense, you created a little mini libertarian or an anarchist. I don't know how many people's stories I hear every day. Well, I wasn't really involved in politics, but then I got pulled over one day because I had a joint on my, and I went to jail for it. And, I thought this is goddamn wrong and it's immoral. I shouldn't be in a cage right now. And it started the mind thinking. So the more they mess with us, the more we gain traction. So, we're doing the right job because they're attacking us like crazy. We're over the target, like Alex Jones always says. We're over the target. We're taking flak. So just keep pounding them, and we're going to win the war. It's just going to happen. It's just a matter of people like me and my father, or some of you other people out there who are activists. It's frustrating because we're ahead of the bell curve. We're ahead of the curve. We're like, come on, guys, but we're impatient. I do believe, I'm an optimist. I do believe there's no way we're going to come out of this where we're going to end up underneath the left authoritarian regime, because it just won't happen. People like Trump supporters and myself will resist that. And if it comes down to it, we'll violently resist it. If we're going to be the option of, you're going to a re-education camp, we're going to re-educate you to be a liberal. No, I don't think so. I'll die in that instance. So good luck, guys. And we're at the 2-hour mark, so we could probably wrap up soon. But just words of encouragement to anyone listening. We're gaining traction. Me and my father have been talking these things for 10 years. And back 10 years ago, we were talking in a little echo chamber, just amongst libertarians, debating these ideas. Now it's such in the public sphere that even the average sheeple, even the average lefty is like, damn, the government's corrupt. I just think it should be socialist. So if we can at least educate these people, we're all moving in the right direction. Crime rates are going down. Prosperity is going up. Freedom is gaining, even around the world, even China, one child policies they used to have, here in America and Canada, we're upward. We're like, oh my God, you can't just deliver a baby out of the womb and then kill it. That's immoral, infanticide. But yet we seem to forget that China had a one child policy, that all the time they would take babies, drown them in buckets beside the mother because nope, population control. So you see the world's moving towards liberty and freedom. They can't stop it. They're just trying really hard right now. That's why you see the media freak out. The freak out for Trump, everything. The left going hysterical because they're in the final phases of being squashed and defeated. So as much as we beat ourselves up, and the media is very well at making it look like you got no allies out there, you guys are losing the war, we're winning, or that's what the left likes to promote. No, they're not. They're losing. They're eating themselves. Their ideology is getting so radical that even the base is moving against them. People who are libertarians are linking up with friggin' Mitch McConnell. I mean, now we're getting behind Mitch McConnell and be like, oh, damn, Mitch McConnell, not too bad. He's actually passing some legislation. I hate Mitch McConnell. He's a freaking deep stater. But you see, we're all coming together. At least we're moving in the right direction. So always keep that positive approach. Never let yourself get too negative and down, because the media will have you focus on the negative. But, you know, take a look outside, open your blinds. The world's going on, and it's going good, and we're moving toward the right direction.
Yeah. Hey, I keep thinking, thank goodness for objective, biological, psychological, and sociological reality, because these advocates of big government, whether it's the big wigs in the political powers of authority, or their media mouthpieces, or the mindless order followers, as much as I like to give myself a little bit of credibility and a slight tap on the back for helping to educate, inform, and enlighten people in regards to the importance of fundamental liberties as far as what it is to be a free human being. Matter of fact, what my attempts, my endeavors have paled in comparison to what these central planners have done, because for every one or two people that I've ever woken up just by using good logic, reasoned arguments, and common sense, or morals and principles, well, no, the central planners, the political masters, the thought leaders, and the mindless order followers, they, like Matt was alluding to earlier, they've probably done more to waken up the masses to the inherent corruption that is the representation of big government than I could have ever done. Yeah, they are making more libertarians than I could ever hope to make. Like I say, it's not me that's actually helping the most, as much as I would like to think that I have a much bigger voice than I truly do. No, I'm humble enough to admit that I only have a small voice out there. Matter of fact, a lot of the people that are turning towards libertarianism, or the understand what it is to be a free human being, probably has nothing to do with what I've said. Probably has to do with the fact that big government fucked them over, though. And now they realize that, hey, wait a minute, I'm actually a pretty good, decent, moral human being, and I don't feel that I should have been treated in this manner. Why is my restrictions of liberty and freedom, why is it being curtailed so much? And then they start looking and, oh, shit, look at this term libertarian. Oh, I like this. These are people that, hey, sounds a whole lot like me, right? So, yeah, as Matt alluded to, no, I mean, I'm doing my best. Matt's doing her best. There's a lot of us out here are doing our best to put forth some good common sense and logical stances in regards to what it is to be a free human being. Now, these central planners are actually, but see, that's the thing. They're so inept because the ideology blinds them to the outcome, right? All they think about is the ideology drives them, but they can't have the vision. Their tunnel vision obscures their ability to recognize what unfolds as you espouse or spew your constant central planning narrative. Well, and you're a top-down authoritarianism. Well, you just create a larger and larger portion of the population. They'll turn and pivot towards libertarians, or the understanding of what it is to be a free human being, and they'll turn against you just by sheer fact that they know. I mean, every human being knows themselves, because there's no one that can say that they know the individual better than the individual knows themselves. So just like myself, what turned me towards understanding libertarianism is the fact that, yes, I thought I'll use that as my own experience. I thought I lived most of my life as a pretty decent person, right? Never tried to force or impose my ideas, never used government as a means to an end. You know, never went around threatening everyone that they got to abide what I got. But then my whole life was upended and turned upside down. And because of government and corruption and the fact that these central planners use collectivism, or this pretense that you throw everyone under the same proverbial bus for the actions of a few or a minority, yeah, that was enough to tell me that, no, it's very important to understand the importance of respecting the individual and individual rights and freedoms. And that, like I said, once you start down that road, well, and Matt alluded to it earlier, is once you understand what it is to be a free human being, you're never going anywhere other than that. Like, you might try to enlighten or expand yourself on that knowledge, which is what I do on a continue and ongoing basis, but you're never going to get to the point, I'm never going to get to the point where I'm going to succumb to collectivism, where I should just subordinate or subject myself to some political ruler or some authority that pretends that they have a better understanding or grasp of morality than I do, when they literally, that's the thing. You can put forth that message, you can put forth that narrative, but if you're saying you're more benevolent, more moral, more ethical, more principled than me, and you're coming at me with using the threat of force all the time to impose your will on me, well, I know you're lying, because I've done a lot in my life to help people align with my own personal preference, my own personal principles, and I never had to threaten anybody. I just had to lead by example. I just had to show it's just a good idea to treat people with the same kind of reciprocal mentality that, hey, I want to treat you as a decent person, so hopefully you'll do the same in return. So I'll get that reciprocal effect. Like I say, the natural incentive is still structured inside the human mind. Well, if you at least have somewhat of a free mind. Now, there are a lot of people that have had their minds completely obscured with this kind of central plan of authoritarianism, just like back in the day when religion used to take over the minds of the masses. But I believe they still have the capacity. I believe most people out there have the ability to escape that kind of top-down authoritarianism and start thinking critically about these issues. So like I say, whether it's the central planners creating them lots of libertarian themselves, or us just giving people some good information or educating and informing them enough so they can think about these issues critically. Like I say, it doesn't matter if it happens in a day, in a week, a month, or a year. Eventually, most people will come around and understand, yeah, I want to be free. And I think most other people, I think everyone should be free too, because actually that's the only way I've ever experienced my own personal life. That's actually the best experience I've ever had, is when I dealt with people on a voluntary basis and we respected each other for our sovereignty and for our individuality. And every one of us out there knows that intrinsically. And that's why we, at the end of the day, libertarians, the people that stand for the fundamental principles of liberty, we will win at the end of the day, not just in the metaphorical, not just in the physical, not just in the political or the social or economic sphere, but in the entire sphere of what it is to be a human being, because we've got the right ideas, we've got the right incentives, and we've got the ambition, goals, principles, and positions to hold them to account. So good luck with all you central planners. You're going to see at some point in time, Hitler was taken down, Mussolini, they're all taken down, and at the end of the day, you're going to fail and falter as well.
Yeah, so my final statement would be, yeah, it's pretty frustrating when you're like a Stefan Molyneux and Alex Jones, or someone like me and my dad, getting up every day, putting in all this work, studying, doing all this educating, and then you get someone like a Nancy Pelosi gets up there and says, that's fine, Trump. You want to do an executive order to build the wall? We'll just use an executive order to take all Americans' guns. And that bitch with one statement wakes more Americans than Stefan Molyneux or Alex Jones or me have been doing for years, trying to pound this information. So thank you, Nancy Pelosi. Thank you, Trudeau, for airing out all your corruption on TV. Thank you, corrupt judges. Right now, I want to thank all you corrupt judges sitting on your mastery chairs that are messing with people's lives, police out there taking people to jail for victimless crime. Thank you, because you're doing more for the movement. Now, what happens to these people is they're confused, right? They get messed up by the state. They're like, whoa, what's happening? Now, they come to us and they find us. We're the educators. We're like the pillars that tell them, okay, well, here's what's going on. Here's the solution. But you statists are creating them into the state where they start questioning things. So thanks a lot. All those people sitting in jail right now for victimless crimes, well, their minds question, what the hell? Why is this moral? You're just creating more wins for us. So keep it up. Keep getting the left more and more radical. Keep divulging into deplorable behaviors, because you're doing more for the liberty movement than I ever could. So I appreciate it. You know, maybe now I don't have to put in maybe 5 years of work instead of 10, 20 years work if you guys weren't so goddamn stupid in your tactics, trying to push post-storm abortion, trying to push green trade deals. Like, you guys are idiots. And that's what Trump said. These people are idiots. They're getting up on, Russia collusion. And meanwhile, you got Hillary Clinton busting uranium one, and they're the ones that help the Russians more than anyone. So I've always found too, what the left is screaming, that Russia collusion or racist or whatever they're pointing the finger at, usually in most cases is because they're the ones that are racist and they're the ones that are the Russian agents. So always be careful of that too.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd wrap it up with that, but I'd like to thank all you statists out there. You're doing a great job. Keep it up. And yeah, like Trump said, and me and my father, we support the Green Deal. We support Trudeau being with SN11, and I hope he gets in bed with them. I hope he's on the board after. You guys keep it up.
That'll hasten the collapse of this pretense of this belief in central planning authorities for sure. But yeah, that was good, Matt. You did an excellent job on that final aspect of it. But yeah, exactly, folks. That's what we're talking about. Like I say, and the people that constantly use the threat of force as their ultimate means to the end without any ethics or morality to back it up. Think about it. If somebody takes that gun out of their hands, right, what do they got after that? They don't even have nothing to give an excuse or argue themselves out of that particular situation, because they've painted themselves into that corner where the only thing that they had at their disposal was that ultimate threat of violence and force. So what do they got? Well, in politics, well, somebody else takes over that. Well, they got nothing left after that. Hey, I don't want to take over the gun in the room, but hey, if at the end of the day, I end up with the right ideas and the pretense where people think that I have the authority as well, good luck trying to knock that down. I don't want it. Never want it. And that's why I've never delved into politics. But like I say, For all you people out there that want to use government as your ultimate means to an end, you better be careful, because that gun, that, like I say, that gun in the room might be placed in the hands of someone that's much more competent and much better skilled at using it than you are.
One little thing to that too is Maxime Bernier or Trump, both of those guys, they'll take the gun, but at least they'll put the goddamn safety on, guys.
Yeah, right on, Matt. All right, well, thanks everyone. Like I say, we got 2 videos in today, and I didn't see one skip or one freezing. I'm so happy today to see that the second video come out. The quality seemed to be worked out fine. I think we've got our technical issues problems all solved. So now we're going to do this on a weekly basis. I already set up on my Facebook page all the way up to 2021, folks. So yeah, we're gonna be busy every Sunday, and you know damn well we're going to be covering some very serious topics. Like I say, I love doing my short videos during the week, but having the podcast and having an alternative opinion from like someone like Matt, and I'm going to bring other people in too, so that we can have conversations with not just me and Matt, so we can have other people offering their own perspectives, opinion. Because to me, like I say, I'm all about ideas. I don't ever pretend. Matt doesn't pretend. We don't know everything. I love to hear from lots of different people, but at the very least, you're getting a lot more than what you'll ever get from anyone in the established media or in the established political parties. You're getting some actual counter narratives and some opinions that actually probably helps educate and inform you, rather than keeping you in that constant race to the lowest common denominator or playing that collective game or that identity politics game. Now, we're going to help educate, inform you, and elevate your intellect, not try to race you down to that lowest common denominator. So thanks for watching our second podcast. We'll see you next Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern. It's Canadian Libertarian and Matt, the anarchist, or what do you call yourself again, Matt?
I don't know what I'm going to call myself now. I'm still in.
Yeah, we'll come up with a whole new name. But anyway, thanks. Sorry, go ahead.
I said we'll come up with that. I don't even like using the term anarchist anymore because it's gotten taken over by the left.
Yeah, I know some negative connotation, but you know what? You could even take back that name if you want. But anyways, thanks a lot for watching this. We'll see you next weekend, folks.